What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 636. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how you doing, bud? What's going on?
Oh, doing well. Got to have a delightful brunch with Gabby and Matt Nass, so no big deal.
Jeez, just running the brags first thing out here, huh? I slept until like right before the show, basically.
Yeah, that's evergreen mood, but I'm glad you made it.
Yeah. I stayed up too late working on a watch, as I want to do, but I'm ready to go for the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty Set review, Rare and Mythic Rare. You know, they pushed a lot of the cards and the commons and uncommons, and I'm curious to see if they did the same with the rares. I'm also curious to see if there's a trend forming about how powerful these rares are. We had such powerful ones out of the last set, Crimson Vow, and I'm curious to see if they dial it back a bit here, or if we see more of the same, and we're going to find out today. Before we get into it, though, let's mention our sponsors, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for all things Magic related. You can get Kamigawa Neon Dynasty from Channel Fireball. You can pre-order and or order depending on when you end up making it over there. And you can get singles, from the marketplace, so that lets you kind of shop around for the people that have them for the best deal, or maybe the fastest shipping, or usually not for brand new sets, but condition can be a thing too for older cards. And you can shop and compare at the CFB marketplace. And of course, you can also pick up your sealed product there too, and make sure that you get the best deal. Since those are, fungible, right? A box of Magic cards is a box of Magic cards for the most part. You can really kind of price shop those ones and try to make sure that you get the best deal.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in the market for something that's non-fungible,
I was going to say that right after I said that if you do buy something at CFB, you should use the affiliate code LR at checkout. It lets them know that we sent you over and helps out the show, and we appreciate it. In the non-fungible markets, FTX, they also sponsor this podcast. FTX is a marketplace for digital assets. So if you're looking to get some cryptocurrency, for example, FTX is a place where you could go to manage that, where you could buy and sell and trade a host of different types of digital assets. And, they're the safe, regulated way to do it. If you're inside the United States, you go to ftx.us. And of course, there's also an app for your phone so that you can manage these things on the fly. And if you're outside the US, it's ftx.com. And, this is a company with long-term aspirations. You can see that from their marketing strategy and from the way that they've set things up as far as trying to play ball, right? They believe that cryptocurrency and that blockchain based technologies will end up being something that is part of our day-to-day lives in the future, and that future may be coming, even quicker than we think. And they are setting themselves up to be in a really good position long-term to be a player in that space and to solidify themselves. That's why if you go to the ftx.us site, you'll see that they're regulated. They completely comply to every regulation and anything else that is required of them. And so you can feel safe, with investing your time and your money with FTX. Now, I'll always remind people, though, that this is a form of investment, which always carries risks. So make sure that you check out and talk to a registered investment professional before you do investing of any kind. Also, the show's brought to you by you via the Patreon. This is kind of the most direct way to us, right? Patreon.com/limited resources. This is how you can help support the different content creators and artists and podcasters like us and whoever it is that kind of makes your day better, that you want to see going. This helps creators like Luis and I continue to do shows like this for as long as we've done it. It gives us kind of a bedrock from which to work, and that's a really important piece of the puzzle that can be very difficult to put together as a freelance creator effectively. We're not hired or owned by any other company. So it's kind of up to us to put everything together. And, we've chosen Patreon as kind of our bedrock there. So we did want to say extra special thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. It really does mean more than you could know. Okay, Luis, we're going to get into the rares and mythic rares, every single one of them from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. But first, the grading scale.
All right, we're going to use a grading scale that goes A through F. A's are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind, and the best cards in the set. We're going to see quite a few of those in this. This is the Mythic Rare and Mythic set review, so we're going to end up, you end up seeing a lot of A's in that category. Cards like Toxrill and Halana and Alina. So you got it close. B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. Headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reasons in this set to be in a color pair. So we're talking cards like Alluring Suitor, Bloodtithe Harvester. And once again, the B's are going to be a little bit less likely than A's when it comes down to rares and mythics. They tend to live on the opposite side of the poles. C's are going to be the category we're going to see least today. These are the playables, the pawns of limited, the kind of interchangeable cards that you end up with having a lot of in your deck. D's are cards that are sometimes playable. You would prefer not to run them. They're not very exciting, and every deck has some number of them. That's just kind of how it works. F's are cards that are so cards like Nebelgast Beguiler, Daybake Accelerants, that sort of thing. F's are cards that are unplayable in virtually all scenarios, and we're going to see some of those here for sure, because when you're talking rares and mythics, we're going to talk 10-mana cards that care about legends and nothing else, just completely out of bounds for normal limited. There's also two subcategories. We have sideboard and build around. So sideboard cards are cards you wouldn't main deck, but you would definitely bring in if it was appropriate. Not too many of those in this category. And of course, build arounds, cards that you need to do some work to build around them. It can be very potent if you do. Rares and mythics have plenty in the build around category.
What is the Necro card called?
Necroduality.
Duality, that's what it was. I messed that one up too. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start with red. We are going to go in casting cost order. So if you go onto Scryfall, you can put the. In fact, I could just put a link to the sorting that we used for it. But thankfully, Scryfall got the cards up just after we did the commons and uncommon set review. And so we can use it for this. That means that starting with red, our first card is called March of Reckless Joy, which has a casting cost of red X, and it's an instant. It's just a regular rare. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of red cards from your hand. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. That's cool. Dangerous, but cool. Exile the top X cards of your library. You may play up to 2 of those cards until the end of your next turn.
So there's a cycle of these, and in general, the way I look at these is you don't want to take advantage of the alternate cost of exiling cards from your hand, because, that just usually means you're ending up down cards, and you don't really want to do that. But they're all pretty much costed as reasonably to just cast. So for this, you get Reckless Impulse for 3 mana, right? So that's the 2 mana spell from Crimson Vow, and that card was pretty good. At 1 mana more, it's a lot less impressive, but this also scales up. When you top deck this and have 10 mana in play, you cast it for like 5 or something, and you just get to play up to 2 of those cards. You don't have to choose them. It's just once you play 2 of them, you can't play the rest. And you can play lands off it, which is pretty nice. And then if you, in a pinch, if you're really looking for something, imagine, you've got this plus 2 of the red cards in hand, but if you hit a combat trick this turn, you're going to win the game. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the pitch cost could actually imagine it happening. You end up pitching a bunch of cards, exiling your top 7 cards, and you're just like, I found the Kindled Fury. That's all I needed to push through that last point of damage. So
right. 2 things to bring up here. So the one exception to when you would want to pitch is just if you have cards that aren't good at that stage of the game, right? You have a piddly 1 drop in your hand, and you're like, well, I could have this on board, but I'd rather have a better chance of finding something sweet at this point. Also, why is this an instant? Like, not that I'm going to turn it down for being an instant, but this is not naturally suited to being an instant. Like, because most of the time that you play these type of cards, you're looking to hit a land off of it at some point. I mean, I guess you could just end step it and then try to play 2 spells from it or something. I'm speaking for limited here, of course. Yeah,
my guess is it's an instant because the whole cycle is all instants.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to turn it down for that, but
nothing too fancy.
Yeah.
Well, another reason that this card's actually kind of funny is you could keep a 1-lander with this. Imagine you keep a 1-lander, you go land go, turn 2, you didn't hit a land. So you're like, all right, play this, exile a red card, look at my top 2 to try to find land, or 2 red cards, look at my top 4, and then you'll land and next turn land or something.
Yeah, you could do that. And that is one thing to keep in mind, though, right? Is that there are many times in Limited, if you're playing it early in the game, where it is better to play this at sorcery speed, even if you could play it at instant, just to hit those land drops. What do you want to give it? I mean, this is a mediocre card, honestly, to kick things off. Funny enough, this actually feels like the Mythic Rare of Mythic Rares, like a C.
This is a straight C. I think you should probably play it in most of your red decks and not worry too much outside of that,
That's what I think, too. Weird. C for March of Reckless Joy. Next is Goro Goro, Disciple of Ryusei. And this is 1 and a red for a 2/2 legendary Goblin Samurai at rare.
Oh, yeah.
2 different activated abilities. One of them is pay red. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. And then you can also do the activated ability 3 red to create a 5/5 red Dragon Spirit creature token with flying. Activate this ability only if you control an attacking modified creature.
Well, this is a very good card. You get a 2-mana 2/2 that has the ability late game to either have haste itself or to start hasting your other creatures. And then if you ever get a modified creature into combat, I mean, you get really paid off. This looks like a builder on A. Like I would want to actively have 3 or 4 ways to modify creatures in this deck. And if you could even kind of time it right, you could end up in a spot where you go slow roll this, play this, immediately attack with a different modified creature, and then make a dragon, at 7 mana.
Yeah. And this is the type of thing, too, that you would be fine even sending a modified creature to its death, right? I mean, even
exchanging it for a 5/5.
Right. Like trading it to turn it even just into the first 5/5 dragon, it's going to put a huge bump in your win percentage. And if you ever get to activate this twice, it's GG. So yeah, this card looks fantastic, especially just for the 2 mana.
I mean, this isn't even really a build around, to be honest. You're just always going to play this in your red decks because the base level is already good enough. And just given the way the set is themed, I would imagine most decks have a way or two to modify a creature just because there's a lot of cards that just do that kind of in addition to what else they do. So I would just give an A- to Goro Goro overall.
I like it.
Really strong card, a lot of upside and no real downside. 2-mana 2/2 with the haste ability. Next up, we have actually the card I got to preview, Lizard Blades. It's 1 and a red for an artifact creature equipment lizard. This is one of the reconfigure cards. It's a 1/1 double strike, and the equipped creature has double strike with reconfigure 2. So note, this gives no stat bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think reconfigure would have just been a stronger mechanic if the stats were automatically grafted, but that's not how it works. So 2 mana for a 1/1 double strike, already good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in a set that has like modified as one of the themes where it's like, some of the time you cast this, you're just going to get a really good target for your pump spells. And then later in the game or whenever it's appropriate, you can go ahead and equip this on your like 3/3 flyer and attack for 6 or, put this on whatever it is that needs a bonus. So I like Lizard Blades. This looks like a B to me. Just a strong card no matter how you use it, and it gets even stronger if you take a little effort and play around it.
I'm with you. B for Lizard Blades. It looks like it's going to fit into the modified stuff super well, too. What about Ogre Head Helm?
So this is 1 and a red for a 2/2. It's an equipment ogre, an artifact creature.
What is that?
You see a little ogre with like little spider legs running around.
Uh-huh.
And so it's got reconfigure. So it's 1 and a red for a 2/2 with reconfigure of 3. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. And whenever Ogre Head Helm or equipped creature deals combat damage, you may sacrifice it. And what's key is if this deals damage, you sacrifice it. You may.
To a player.
Yes, to a player. If the creature deals damage, you can sacrifice the creature and you keep the helm. And if you do make the sacrifice, you discard your hand and then draw 3 cards.
Whoa.
So that's a pretty substantial bonus.
So the it is the creature or the it is the helm?
So whenever Ogre Head Helm or equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. It depends on what deals the damage.
Right. So it is the creature if it's equipped and it is the helm if it's
right.
not.
So the joke here is that you're equipping it being the helm onto something. And if that thing's hit, you can sacrifice the creature to draw 3, discard your hand, or you attack with this as a 2/2. And if your opponent doesn't block it, you sack it to draw 3.
Man, and it gives +2/+2. What's the reconfigure cost? 3?
3 colorless. So,
ouch, that's a lot.
2 mana for well, first of all, this is 2 mana for a 2/2 that you can equip onto things to give +2/+2. Great start. And then the ability to sack the creature or the helm or whichever gets in to get a new hand of 3 cards. That's a pretty appealing upside.
And it's a May?
Yeah, it's a May. You don't.
So this thing's just great.
Yes, I believe it is very good.
Wow. Yeah, I'm impressed.
This looks like a B+ to me.
I agree. B+ for Ogre Head Helm, and especially in a low curve deck. Yeah, that's great. Wow, these rares, the equipment or reconfigure rares seem really good. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is next. Is it the Mirror Breaker I'm thinking of? 2 and a red for a saga. Chapter 1 for this saga is you get a 2/2 red Goblin Shaman creature token with whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. And chapter 2 is you may discard up to 2 cards. If you do, draw that many cards. And chapter 3 is it transforms into, it is the Mirror Breaker I was thinking of. Reflection of Kikijiki. This is an enchantment creature, Goblin Shaman. It's a 2/2. And you can pay 1 and tap it to create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except for it has haste, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So a modified version of Kikijiki Mirror Breaker on the other side here.
Yeah, this card's great because for 3 mana you get a 2/2 that makes a treasure when it attacks, which is kind of cool. And then you get to rummage twice. And then you get a 2/2 that starts copying creatures. So Reflection of Kikijiki, the backside of this is really powerful. You get a 2/2, you can pay 1 and tap to make a blocker, to re-trigger an enters the battlefield ability.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot that goes on here. And that's all for just 3 mana. So this looks like an A- to me. The backside of this is like kind of a must-kill card.
It is. Yeah, it's worth noting that, these do get exiled and then re-enter the battlefield, so they're not transforming, therefore it will have summoning sickness.
Yeah.
So your opponent will have a window to kill it before you can start copying stuff, but they have to. Like Louis said, they can't just let this thing sit. Yeah, I like A- for Fable of the Mirror Breaker. That card seems great.
Yeah, really, really strong.
Especially just 2 in a red. What about Scrap Welder?
Yeah, so it's 2 in a red for a 3/3 Goblin Artificer at rare, and you can tap and sacrifice an artifact with mana value X, return target artifact with mana value less than X from your graveyard to the battlefield, and give it haste. So it's a 3 mana 3/3 to start, so pretty beefy. And then it basically lets you trade down where you sack artifacts to bring back cheaper artifacts. This prevents a lot of the cheating cases with Goblin Welder, right? Where you weld out a 0 mana artifact for a 10 mana artifact. But in a deck full of artifacts, it's a really powerful ability because, first of all, you can weld an artifact that's going to die, right? They targeted your 4/4 vehicle with a removal spell, or you blocked with a 2/2. So you can kind of make the front side not much of a cost. And then there are artifacts with ETBs. Imagine, the 1 mana vessel, right? That lets you exile your top card when you play it, the experimental vessel or whatever. Scrap Welder bringing that back is pretty strong. So now every artifact turns into like a draw 1/draw 2. And you can get value out of kind of doing that, even if you do always have to make sure you're going in the right direction. You can only go one way. You can't go the other way.
Right.
So
interesting that they put the stats so high on this as a 3/3 for 3, kind of encouraging you to put it into combat, but it has tap ability.
Yeah, I think that they took away a lot of the power of the actual ability in terms of the ability here obviously has ways it can be good, but isn't like a showstopper exactly. But in exchange, you actually get a creature that you would just put into literally any red deck. Yeah. 2 in a red for a 3/3 is already just good enough. You can do good things with that. So overall, I think Scrap Welder gets a B, and then there's some decks where it's going to be a lot more appealing than that even.
I think so too. I don't think that you'll use, this ability will get used every once in a while, and then maybe if you get lucky, you can actually just build a whole deck around it, which is kind of cool. But I think for the most part, the number of times that you actually activate that ability is going to be relatively low.
Yeah, I can imagine a B+ actually on this.
I would still say B. I don't think you're going to actually, it's a bad deal, right? It's fundamentally against your interests.
I think that there's decks that are going to be really happy to have this. I do think it's a B still, but I think that there will be decks where this will be one of the top 5 cards of your deck because it's a 3 mana 3/3 that kind of has tap draw card. There's a lot of decks you can make that, right?
Sure. Yeah, especially with that common. And Atsushi, the Blazing Sky is next. This is 2 red for a 4/4 legendary dragon spirit.
Okay, I have a prediction real quick before we even finish the card. All 5 of the Mythic Dragons are going to be A's. Let's see what happens.
All right. Let's see how many make it. Which one's going to be not an A? It's going to be the green one.
Green one. It's got to be the green one. Yeah, yep.
So that's the one we'll pay attention to. All right, so Atsushi, 2 red, 4/4 flying trample. We're already getting close. When Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, dies, choose one. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Wow. So you just get a March of Reckless Joy for 2, just like, here you go. And then, or you can have it create 3 treasure tokens. Now we got there on the red one.
Yeah, I mean, 2 red, 4/4 flying trample's like A-, right? That's just
exactly
huge and beefy. And then you add to that it either draws 2 cards if you're short on mana, or long on mana rather, because you just do that if you've got a lot of mana lying around. Or if you're short on mana, you just get 3 mana. It dies into 3 Lotus Petals.
That's crazy.
So yes, A for Atsushi. Really strong card. You don't have to do anything. It's just great in every deck. Literally takes no building around in any way, shape, or form.
I really like that those 3 treasure tokens could still be relevant too, because this thing only costs 4. So if your opponent just snaps it off, like you're like Atsushi go, they're like untap, kill it. If you get the treasure and you have stuff to do with it, I mean, you can drop, an 8-drop the next turn potentially. That's pretty crazy. What about Thundering Raiju?
This is 2 red for a 3/3 spirit at rare. It is haste. Whenever Thundering Raiju attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju.
Jeez.
But it can target itself with the counter. So again, the floor on this is 4 mana, 4/4 haste.
That's great.
So yeah, and we're not talking weak cards here. Like these cards. They're not messing around when it comes to rares and mythics here, and these cards are going to be pretty strong. So
seems like
this is like an A-. Like
I would just give it an A, I think.
Yeah, that's probably fine too.
The only reason I bump it up a little is because if you do somehow go 2-drop, 3-drop this, it's just like over, right? Like your opponent's going to go, wow, like, okay, I guess I can't block any of your creatures now.
This is given an A. It's a 3/3 haste that pings them, and every time you attack, you get a +1/+1 counter.
Stupid.
All right.
Great card. What does Invoke Calamity do?
Okay, so this is another cycle, and I'm going to predict we're going to end up about the same on all of them, which is to say, if you can cast them, they're really good. So Invoke Calamity is 1 red. So 1 colorless and 4 red mana.
Okay.
For an instant at rare, and you may cast up to 2 instant or sorcery spells from your graveyard with total mana value 6 or less without paying their costs.
From your graveyard.
So basically, you spend 5 mana and you get 6 mana worth of spells out of your graveyard. This is actually, I think, probably one of the weaker ones because there's 2 setup things going here, right? And this is something we always want to be aware of when we're looking and trying to evaluate these cards. A, you have to have 4 red mana. That's like
very
the first
difficult. Yeah.
And that's not trivial. And then the second is that you need to have 2 instant or sorceries with combined mana value of 6 ready to get played, like cards that you want to play. So there are some decks that I can imagine end up playing this and making good use of it, right? Like you've got 10 spells in your deck, and this is one of them. But the other question is, is that deck also going to have a lot of red mana? Like,
quad.
How's it casting this card? So the part that kind of scares me about this is you not only need the spells, you also need the mana. And if either of those parts isn't there, the card is either blank if you can't cast it, or kind of weak if you can cast it and play 1 4-mana spell. Mm-hmm. So overall, this looks closer to an F than playable because you need a lot to go right. That said, I could believe if you showed me a mono red deck with 7 other spells where this card's just one of your best cards. Totally believable. But this is like kind of like one of those really narrow build arounds that if I had to guess is on average, you should just not consider this card. If you open a pack, it should not be really on your radar, but there will be some decks where it's the best card in your deck.
It's an instant. Do you get to cast those sorceries straight away? Like, is that?
No, you have to. Oh, we misread this, or I did. It's also your hand. So I guess you can cast a spell from your hand without paying the cost, but That doesn't actually make it that much better because you're losing value. You really want to cast the spell, then use this to cast it. So
definitely,
yes, but just so we know what the card does, you could also play a spell from your hand, but you do have to cast it. It doesn't let you cast them. Yeah, you still have to. No, you'd be able to cast a sorcery at this time.
Okay.
Because this is resolving still, so you're obviously able to play cards at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, at any rate, this is all nitpicking. I 100% agree with your broad strokes, which is that if you open this card, you really shouldn't even look at it. But as is always the case, there's exceptions, and you should be aware, hey, if you are playing a heavy red, heavy spells deck, and you can get a late Invoke Calamity, it might actually be one of the better cards in your deck. On average, it's an F. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw this on the stack like 1 or 0 times or something over the course of the entire format. But it's like a build around, B- or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're not going to invoke much Calamity in this set.
What about Explosive Singularity?
So this is
expensive.
8 red. So it's expensive.
Really expensive.
It's a sorcery at Mythic Rare. As an additional cost to cast this, you can tap any number of untapped creatures you control, and it costs 1 less for each creature tapped this way. So this has Convoke.
Okay.
It lets you tap any creature to help pay for this. It does 10 damage to any target.
What?
So that's a lot of damage. I mean, that's half their life total. So it costs 10. How many creatures do you need to tap before it's reasonable? If you can tap 5 creatures, first of all, if you have 5 creatures in play, you probably have more than 5 mana. I think the sweet spot for this is going to be like 6 or 7 mana.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Where
you tap 3 or 4 creatures. But the thing is, at the point of the game where this is best, which is reducing your opponent's life total from 10 to 0, I do think that is doable. It doesn't sound unreasonable to me to look at Explosive Singularity and think, all right, yeah, this is the way I'm going,
Oh, we got a grown test candidate right here.
Yes.
I stabilized, everything was fine. I was drawing extra cards, and then boom, I was at 9 life and I was dead, and they didn't even have to attack me. I would start off aggressively taking this card and assuming that it's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it looks kind of like a B+, A-, probably closer to A-.
Yeah, I would go B+, but even, it can kill creatures too. Like, just if your opponent's at 18 and you're like, I just got to kill this big bomb that they played, it can do that.
It is kind of bad at killing creatures though, because you have to kind of attack your whole team.
That's right.
But when you have this card in your deck, okay, let me give you a scenario. You're playing against your opponent's aggressive red-white deck. Mm-hmm. Game 1, they kill you with this, right? Mm-hmm. You think you've stabilized, you're at 8, and they cast this for 6 mana and tap 4 creatures.
Yeah.
How are you feeling going into the rest of the games?
Real scared. I'm hyper aware of Explosive Singularity at that point.
Like, this is exactly what people think Fireballs like Blaze Red X Deal X is. Red X Deal X has kind of fallen off because limited games don't last 15 turns very often anymore. Mm-hmm. But this is exactly what people used to fear, which is it's turn 7, I'm at 9 life, and then they just have a card that will kill me out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what else I've got going on. So
I like B+ for Explosive Singularity. I think it's going to win a lot of games.
It's a very powerful card.
It's also just a game plan in one card.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for red. Let's move to green. Our first green card is called March of Burgeoning Life. It is green X for an instant. Does that sound familiar? It's a rare. As an additional cost to cast it, you may exile any number of green cards and from your hand, and this spell costs 2 less for each. So just like the other, choose target creature with mana value less than X. Search your library for a creature card with the same name as that creature, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle.
This is not a card I anticipate ever putting in my deck.
Yeah.
So you basically should consider this card unplayable. I know people are going to want to play it because it's kind of cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're spending more mana than the creature costs every time. So you're already losing a little efficiency there. It costs 3 mana to get a 2-drop. Yes, there is the I discarded 3 green cards and I got a 6-drop for 1 mana, but that card already has to be in play. So you're not doing that on turn 1. That's just not how that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have doubles and not have drawn both. Yes, you can target your opponent's creature if you have the same creature as them, but this is an F. You should just not put March of Burgeoning Life in your deck. It's inefficient, and a lot of the times it'll just be straight up dead. It's just not that often going to work out that it does the thing you want.
F for March of Burgeoning Life. Next is Kami of Transience. This is 1 and a green for a 2/2 spirit at rare with trample. I love me a low-powered trampler. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And at the beginning of each end step, if an enchantment was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, you may return Kami of Transience from your graveyard to your hand. So pretty heavy on the enchantment build-around vibes here for the Kami.
You don't need many, though.
No, one is, good.
Yeah, first of all, getting one counter is enough to make this great.
Yep.
Second, getting it back once later in the game is still, it's a 2-mana 2/2 trample. You didn't really pay any costs. It wears modifications well. Looks like a build around B+, and yeah. I would say the average, I almost don't want to give it a build around grade because I think the average green deck will just want this in their deck.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, you will just put it into any deck even if it doesn't have, even if it only has 1 or 2 enchantments, but it does get better if you build around it. And there's plenty of enchantment creatures and stuff that will trigger it. This card seems really annoying. And, the ceiling isn't super high on it, but the floor is really high. So yeah, I like Kami of Transience at B+, and better if you build around it even. Shigeki Jukai Visionary is our next card. It's 1 and a green for a 1/3 legendary enchantment creature snake druid. Boy, they barely snuck that in.
They had quite the budget for type lines in this.
Look at that thing. It's a 1/3 for 2. So you can pay 1 and a green, tap it, and return it to its owner's hand to reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and the rest in your graveyard. Wow. And it also has channel. So you can pay green XX and discard it to return X target non-legendary cards from your graveyard to your hand.
This card's incredibly good.
That's really cool. So you can bounce it back for value, build up your mana, and then eventually get it into your hand and then channel it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's basically great early and great late. The only time in the game where it's not great is in the mid game if you're, kind of busy doing other stuff. But even then, it's a 2-mana 1/3 that provides value all the time. And just imagine you play this early, you use it, put a land into play, maybe you sneak it into play again, use it again, put a land into play, and then you just keep it in your hand. And now because you have extra lands, you can afford to pay 8 mana to channel it and get 3 cards back.
Right. Is there a concern about decking yourself? It is 4 cards, each activation, and ideally one goes on the battlefield and then 3 in your yard, but each activation is 4 cards, plus that's 10% of your starting library. Realistically, the third activation is probably starting to feel a little sketchy.
Yeah.
First 2 are probably fine.
But the thing is, doing it twice is still just not, it's just not hard to imagine getting away with that. And
not at all, yeah.
And there's some games where doing it 3 times will be fine too.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I think this card is just great.
And you should be able to win with the extra cards.
Oh yeah, I mean
this is instant speed, right? You can block and return.
Yeah, this card does everything you want. It's just a really, really strong card. It's a great top deck late at 8 mana. It's amazing in your opening hand, right? Or how thrilled are you to see this in your opener? And you're wow.
Oh my God, one of the best. Yeah.
I just get to cast this on turn 2. And how big of a threat is that? It seems like a really huge threat. So overall, I think this card is just an A, good early, good late, powerful on either side, basically never dead. Again, turn 6, when you have 6 mana and stuff to do, this isn't going to be something you're going to take advantage of either side, but it's good before then and good after. Now, what else do you want from a card?
Yeah. A for Shigeki Jukai Visionary. Just be aware of your library size. Just be careful. Teachings of the Kirin is next. This is a saga at rare. It's 1 and a green. Chapter 1 is mill 3 cards. And you get a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token that doesn't have flying. Chapter 2 is put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then chapter 3, it transforms into Kirin Touched Orochi, which is a enchantment creature snake monk. It's a 1/1. And whenever it attacks, you choose 1. You can exile target creature card from a graveyard. When you do, you get another one of those 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens. Or you can exile a creature card from a graveyard, and when you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control.
Yeah, not
this is
super high
actually
on
pretty
this.
low power level overall for a rare.
2 mana, you get a 1/1. Milling 3 is on balance an advantage because you fill your graveyard for stuff. You're not going to deck yourself by milling 3 once. And then you get a 1/1, and then you get a +1/+1 counter, and then you get a 1/1 that there's a 1 turn delay because remember, you in the transform, you don't get to attack right away. And then when your 1/1 attacks, you get another 1/1, or you get a +1/+1 counter, but this probably dies when it attacks.
It's like turn 5. Yeah, no.
This looks like a D to me. I don't really think Teachings of the Kieran is where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, what if I flipped it around and I said I can give you a 2 mana 2/2, right? Which you get from this sort of just at face value, and then I'll throw in another 1/1 that has like, that's an enchantment creature that ETBs and it maybe gives you another 1/1 or a counter somewhere.
That's actually fine. Sure.
So it's a C.
That was good. It's a C.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed, I guess, because it's a rare, but yeah,
Same.
It's 2 mana for a 2/2 plus a 1/1. Even that's fine. It's a C.
Weaver of Harmony is next. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 enchantment creature snake druid. Other enchantment creatures you control get +1/+1. And you can pay green and tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. You may choose new targets for the copy, and mana abilities can't be targeted.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird, but 2 mana for a 2/2 that buffs all the other enchantments creatures, like you're going to put this in your deck in like white green, for example, most of the time.
And then you copy saga triggers.
Yeah. That's like kind of the joke, right? Is mostly sagas. Every now and then there's another creature that might have some kind of ability that's good, but yeah, not the most thrilling, but
no, but I think this, like I'm playing this thing. I think it's a B. I think Weaver of Harmony does enough. The upside is actually kind of insane. Like, if you're like, you copy chapter 1, chapter 2, I don't think you can copy chapter 3 for any effect because it exiles, but that's that's the insane upside that probably won't happen that often. But even then you're getting a 2/2 enchantment creature for 2, which already has applications. And then it pumps your other enchantment creatures. If you're kind of in on the enchantment creature deck, this thing's going to be kind of like one of the better 2-drops you could get probably.
Yeah. I am in for Weaver of Harmony. Give it a B.
Yeah. B. What about Jugon Defends the Temple?
So that's 2 and a green for a saga. The first chapter is you make a 1/1 green human monk that can tap for a green. So a lot of ways to make elves in this set.
That are for some reason human monks. Yep.
Oh, this is Mythic Rare, by the way. Chapter 2 is put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Pretty good. Okay. Chapter 3, it comes back as Remnant of the Rising Star, which is an enchantment creature, Dragon Spirit. It's a 2/2 flying. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, put X counters on that creature. And then as long as you have 5 or more modified creatures, Remnant of the Rising Star gets +5/+5 and has trample.
Okay. This is really good. I mean, it just feels like they kind of just put a whole bunch of good words on one card, and
that's where they're at these days. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the Jugon Defensive Temple seems fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's 3 mana for an elf that then you get 2 +1/+1 counters, probably not putting it on the elf, hopefully other things. Then you get a 2/2 flyer, but that ability, the turn you transform into this, you have all your mana untapped, and then you're like, all right, I'll spend 7 mana to play a 3-drop with 4 +1/+1 counters.
Totally. And then that's now a modified creature. You had the other hopefully modified creatures from chapter 2.
This card's absurd.
And you're going to have a 7/7 trampler in like half a turn.
Yeah, this card's an A.
All right. I like A for Jugon Defensive Temple. That card is insane. What about Kodama of the West Tree?
Yeah, all the different, orientations of Kodamas are coming out here. It's a 2 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature spirit at Mythic Rare. It has reach. So 3 mana, 3/3 reach. Modified creatures you control have trample, and whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool card. I mean, it's 3 mana for a 3/3 reach. Already, that's like B level. It's just good, efficient fun.
Yeah.
And then it has pretty significant upside where
it does.
You if you can play a modified creature on turn 2, or like somehow modify a creature on 2, play this on 3 and hit, you get a land right away. Just a great deal.
Totally. And this does count Kodama of the West Tree itself, right?
Yes, if you modified this, it would then gain trample and start to get lands when you fetch. I don't think the ability is going to come up like an incredible amount, because in order for you to like have this in play, have a creature in play, have that creature be modified, and have that creature successfully hit your opponent, it's not impossible, but by the time that happens, the ramp isn't going to be the number one thing that's on your mind. Like, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. Lands are good almost no matter when you find them, but you're not ramping from 2 to 4 mana with this. You know, you're getting a ramp on like turn 5 or 6. That said, it's still a 3/3 trample or 3/3 reach for 3 that gives trample and then has other abilities. So
I think you'd be looking for like high powered creatures, right? You know, you've got a 4/2 or something, and you're like, all right, you know, that you modified, so now it's got trample, and you're like, yeah, I'll trade it off for your stupid 2/2, but I get a land out of the deal, you know, that kind of thing. I think I like A- for Kodama of the West Tree. Like, this isn't the type of card that, you know, comes down and you go, well, now I just can't win the game. But it certainly gives you a big advantage, and I really like it, you know, in any type of modified deck.
I would lean towards B+ on this. I think the ability is cute, but like isn't gonna have a massive impact on the game because so many things have to go right. But the floor of this is already a B, so I think giving it a B+ for its ability is reasonable.
Yeah, B+ seems good. What is the Dragon Kami Reborn?
This is another saga. This is 2 and a green for a saga at rare. The first 2 chapters are the same. You gain 2 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile one of them face down with a hatching counter and put the rest on the bottom. So twice you get to impulse look at the top 3 and then set one aside exiled with a hatching counter on it. Okay. In chapter 3, it comes back as Dragon Kami's Egg. It's a 0/1 enchantment creature. Whenever Dragon Kami's Egg or a dragon you control dies, you may cast a creature spell from among those you own in exile with hatching counters without paying its casting cost.
That's pretty cool.
So basically, you cast this saga for 3 mana, you gain 2 life, and then you set 2 cards aside in exile. You really want to set creatures aside. So you need to have a pretty creature-heavy deck. And then you get a 0/1 that when it dies, you get to play one of those creatures for free. So at base level, you're going to exile 2 cards and just get 1. You know, you're going to get the best of the 2 cards, which also means that if you miss on one of them, it's not the end of the world.
Yes.
And then if somehow another creature dies, another dragon you have dies, you can end up, in a spot where you get both of your creatures. But what do you think? 3 mana to gain 2 life. Kind of look at your top 6 cards and
gain 4.
Oh, gain 4. Sorry, because it happens twice, and then you end up getting to peel the best 2 out of that, and then to play the best one of those 2.
I don't like it. The main thing that I don't like is that your opponent does get to have some say about when and if that egg dies.
Yeah, I mean, they can just not attack into it.
That's right. They can try to set up a turn where they attack with everything and kill you. They can exile it. They can exile it. They can bounce it.
Bouncing this is actually somewhat effective because you then replay it and go through the whole rigmarole, and you're not really doing much. So
no, you're gaining a bunch of life and exiling a very large chunk of your library. Yeah, I really like the design. I think it's a cool, fun card. But if I'm trying to win matches, the Dragon Kami Reborn is probably a card I'm going to avoid. I mean, it kind of looks like a D to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I just don't like giving my opponent that much agency. Because look, let's just say that the egg, you don't ever get to cash in the egg. This card's terrible. I mean, you wouldn't play it at all.
Yeah. So I like D for Dragon Kami Reborn. They can't all be A's, which I'm actually happy about.
Yep. Invoke the Ancients is next. It's 1 green. It's a sorcery and it's rare. It says create 2 4/5 green spirit creature tokens. For each of them, put your choice of a vigilance counter, a reach counter, or a trample counter on it. Wow. That's really powerful if you can swing that mana cost.
Yeah, I mean, you end up with 8-10 worth of stats, and you get to pick the abilities that you need the best. Like if you're defensive, reach. If you need to hit but still have blockers, vigilance, and if you're just completely aggressive, trample, and you can split it up. You don't have to choose the same one twice. Man. So you can get a vigilance and a reach and just have it all covered. So yeah, just again, this is kind of what we expect out of this cycle, except this one's actually really rewarding. This is an A if you can cast it.
Yeah.
For 4 green, you're going to want something like 12 or around 12 plus forests in your deck to really get there,
What about these? We've seen 3 different ways to make these monks, these elf-like monks.
Yeah, I guess
does that change the equation?
Green, they kind of count, yeah.
Boy, that's a really powerful card. Like, that is a reason to be heavy green, no doubt about it.
But, I mean, yeah, okay, so if you have 12 forests in your deck, by turn 5, you're 55% to have drawn 4 of them.
Oof, that's rough.
And with 10 forests, that goes all the way down to 36%. The thing is, you don't need this on turn 5. Like
no, that's true.
If you could cast this on turn 7, it would still be good. So one way to look at these invokes is not to think like, oh, this is 5 mana for 2 things. It's like, what if this card costs 7 mana or 8 mana because I couldn't play it until that turn?
Mm-hmm.
I would still be playing this card at 7 mana.
Too. I would.
I
wouldn't play it for 8. I would play it
it's not a bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you just get to, I mean, you're taking on the risk, of course, of some games where you never hit that 4th green mana, but also you're also getting the reward of some games where you're like, I've drew 3 forests in my opener, and by turn 4 I just need to find 1 more green source. Oh, there it is, boom, and your opponent's staring down 8 power and 10 toughness worth of statted stuff. Also, these are 2 modified creatures straight away too. Like, good God.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a build around A, and the build around component is, can you get 12 forests or green sources? The elves totally count because you don't need these by turn 3, So any creature that taps for a green counts as an additional source, in that if you draw it, it will help you cast Invoke. So I like build around A for the Invoke here, Invoke the Ancients.
All right, here's the big test, Luis. Kura, the Boundless Sky. What does it do?
This is the green dragon. It's 3 green for a legendary creature, Dragon Spirit at Mythic Rare. It's a 4/4 flying death touch. So 5 mana, 4/4 flying death touch. All right.
Good
death
start.
touch on a 4/4 is like okay, but it's bordering on, 7 power creatures have death touch. It's
right.
called 7. When it dies, here's the 2 abilities you get. You can either search your library for up to 3 lands and put them in your hand. Not even just basics, but in limited, that kind of doesn't matter.
Okay.
Or make an XX, where X is the number of lands you control. It's a green spirit.
What?
So at the very worst, this dies into a 5/5.
It might die into something better.
5 mana, 4/4 flying death touch that dies into a 5/5 on turn 5. And of course, sometimes it'll die into, a 9/9. Or in the case that you're really lacking lands, you're playing blue-green ramp, you played this on turn 5. Sometimes you get 3 lands, but it goes into your hand, so you're probably not going to choose the 3 land option all that much. I think mostly you're going to get the XX out of this. That's still an A. It's still just very, very clearly an A.
All right, the green one got there. I like your chances for the rest of them. Last green card is Springleaf Avenger, and this is 3 GG for a 6/5 insect ninja at rare. It says whenever Springleaf Avenger deals combat damage to a player, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, and it has a ninjutsu of 3 and a green. That thing hits hard.
Yeah, so 5 mana for a 6/5 that when it hits them, does whatever.
Draws you a card-ish.
Not the most thrilling, because a 5 mana 6/5 is just not going to get in very much. Ninjutsu makes this card just unbelievable, because if you just have a 1/1 flyer or a 1/1 death touch or a way to sneak something through, all of a sudden you get that first hit in kind of for free, or at least you get guaranteed a first hit in.
That's right.
And it is a little worse than draw a card when you're talking about like a turn 4 ninja, because this is not going to have something. Most of the time you're going to have a permanent in your graveyard. Yep. It's just not that hard to end up there.
Yeah, the 2 things that stand out to me about Springleaf Avenger, 1, that first hit's a big deal because of the damage. I mean, it's just a lot of damage coming through. And 2, is ninjutsu for 3 and a green. That's a significant cost savings to just have this on the battlefield on turn 4, just however you got it there, is a big deal. And, if you get to untap on turn 5 with this 6/5, it is going to be easily the biggest thing on the battlefield. Like, your opponent is not going to have a way to interact with this in combat in a favorable way. They may have a removal spell, but they're going to need it. I like it.
What are you thinking? Like
B+? B+
plus
is what I was going to say for Springleaf Avenger. It's still not, in the game, but it's really, I mean, it's just a stat beast, right? It's just got everything pushed. I would be willing to, return almost any creature to my hand to get this thing down and get it hitting. So I would go B+ on Springleaf Avenger.
Yeah, I like B+ on Springleaf Avenger. It does have a very high end.
Yes.
Like, sometimes you will use this card and, like, you'll ninja it in, if not outright killing them, to hit them for 6, get a 5-drop back, and then your opponent has to deal with this, and
then it's over. Yeah.
It is a little clunky, though. I mean, this gets wrecked pretty hard by instant speed bounce or something.
Yep, totally. All right, so white now.
Mm-hmm.
March of Otherworldly Light is our first card. It is X and a white for an instant. It's rare. As an additional cost to cast it, you can exile white cards to pay 2 mana, just like the others. And it says exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less.
Yeah, I mean, this is
nice.
This is what we're looking for. This is white X, kill anything X or less, and we mean anything. It doesn't just hit creatures. So that is exactly where I want to be, and I think that the fact that you can pitch to cast it is an upside. You're not going to want to use it again. You don't really want to get 2 for 1, but it's definitely upside to have that as an option.
Yes,
the fact that sometimes you will use this is good. So this is just I think it's a B+. It's just solid, really solid removal. You're not getting a huge advantage. You're always paying more than them, but at the end of the day, you are getting what you want, which is you're removing anything you want at a cost which is reasonable, at least.
Yeah, B+ for March of Otherworldly Light. Great card. Next is Light Paws Emperor's Voice. This is 1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary Fox Advisor at rare. Whenever an aura enters
like a fake advisor?
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever an aura enters the battlefield under your control, if you cast it, you may search your library for an aura card with mana value less than or equal to that aura and with a different name than each aura you control. Put that card onto the battlefield attached to Light Paws Emperor's Voice and then shuffle. Okay, it's a lot of words, but it makes sense, right? Like these are the type of ones where the wordiness of the card isn't quite as bad, because once you get what they're trying to say is, you get one that's cheaper and you can't repeat. That's kind of cool. Is this good though?
No.
I mean, you going to trigger this ever?
So this doesn't come up super often, but this is an example of a card which, because of what people could do in Constructed, we're kind of not allowed to use this card in the way we want in Limited.
Right.
Because in Limited, if you could get a more expensive aura, great. You would sometimes pay a 2-mana aura and get a 4-mana aura. If you could get the same aura, you might have 2 copies of the same aura, so sometimes you'll do that. You just can't. You can't go too deep on it, because in Constructed it's just way too busted. If someone would play a 1-mana aura and get a Mythic Conscription, Eldrazi Conscription or whatever,
Totally.
So because of the safety valves needed to make this card printable for Constructed, I think it takes away a lot of the opportunities you'd be able to use this with for Limited, because you need to have auras. A lot of auras, they can't have the same name, and the expensive ones can get the cheaper ones, but not vice versa. My guess is you're not going to prioritize this too much, but if you're heavy in auras, sometimes you might grab this and it'll be fine.
Build around C.
Yeah, it's like a build around C. It's a 2-mana 2/2, You're not asking too much for it.
Yeah. But what about Lion Sash?
This one's good. This is 1 and a white for a 1/1 artifact creature equipment cat. And this is one of the reconfigured cards, and it has the ability of white, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent card, put a +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash, and then the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash. See, again, they're jumping through hoops to make it do the thing you want it to do.
Yes.
Basically, this is a white scavenging ooze, and what it does is it kind of sits there, and eats all the permanents from the graveyard and gets +1/+1 for each of them. And then you can also equip it. So it's like a equipment scavenging ooze, which is pretty cute.
That's cool. I mean, and it's a little broader, right? You get the counters for any permanent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of stuff going in the yard that'll be permanents. This is cool.
Yeah, it's a very powerful card. And when you have this in play, this is one of the ones that would be better if it wasn't a creature. Like if you had the choice, it's
more vulnerable.
Because if you had the choice, you would rather just be an equipment just sitting there getting counters, and then you just make all your creatures big. What your opponent needs to do to kill this is kill the creature it's on, and then kill this while it's a creature, and that kind of solves their problem. But still a very good card. I would give Lion Sash an A-. There's just a lot of games when you play this card, it's going to completely dominate how the game plays out.
Yeah, because you only need to get 2 counters on it before it starts to do work, and once it gets 3 or above, it's just kind of making whatever creature
not hard
goes
to
on
get
the best.
Yeah, to get that many counters on it, because any permanent that goes to a graveyard gives you the option, and then reconfigure just 2 mana to re-equip. Once this is giving +3/+3, +4/+4, and you're spending 2 mana every time, it's just not hard to end up getting a lot of value out of this.
Now, it is worth noting that it doesn't do anything until equipment-wise until it gets counters, right? Like it doesn't give you the +1/+1.
When this is a 7/7, it's going to give +6/+6. It's like kind of the way to think about it.
Cloudsteel Kirin is next. It's 2 and a white for a 3/2 artifact creature equipment Kirin. This one's rare. It's got flying, so 3 mana 3/2 flying, and the equipped creature has flying, and you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game, and it reconfigures for 5.
This card's really funny. So it's 2 separate cards. It's 2 and a white for a 3/2 flyer.
Mm-hmm.
Great. We're in for that. It's an artifact. Works in your artifact decks. Cool. And later in the game, when it becomes close to you might lose the game, you spend 5 and you put it on a creature, and now that creature turns into a platinum angel, and you're just all right, I got to protect this creature.
Okay, so this thing doesn't have that ability, only if it's equipped.
And
cool.
Equip 5, giving flying and that ability, it's not that good for combat, but it is pretty nice at making it so your opponent has to kill their creature. You can maybe, depending on the timing, you can even get them into a lock where they have to kill. They kill your creature and try to kill you. You stop it, with a spell, then re-equip. Now they have to have another kill spell to try to kill you. Some decks really won't be able to kill you. There's some decks that just really struggle to remove creatures from play, and then they're going to have, a problem actually trying to kill you there. So
then you have to do the old library count.
Yeah, except you can't get decked either. So
yeah. How long do you have until this is over? Because you can't kill my guy.
I think overall this card is a B+ just because it's a 3 mana 3/2 flyer.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary equip card is not, I think, that impressive, because basically you're spending 5 mana to get nothing out of it in the hopes that your opponent doesn't have a removal spell to make it so that doesn't work.
Yeah, it does give your creature flying.
It does,
right?
Yes.
So that might. Maybe you just ignore the angel stuff and just go, this creature has flying, hit you. I mean, it's 5 freaking mana. But this type of stuff plays out a lot weaker than it reads. When you see you can't win the game, people are like, oh my God. But it doesn't actually end up playing out like that. For the most part, you're just going to die because they played a 3/2 flyer on turn 3 and smashed you with it.
Yeah, it's a B+ for that. And just be aware that sometimes you can just do the Hail Mary. Because I said some decks will have problems with that. But in reality, if your basket is just full of this one shiny golden egg where if they kill it, you lose the game a lot of the cases because you spent 5 mana to do nothing, you're not going to actually have a great experience for that.
They usually kill it and you lose the game.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah. But all right. Next.
Still,
B+.
Really good. Yeah, really good base rate on this.
What about the Restoration of Iganjo?
So this is another saga. It's a rare. It's 2 and a white. The first chapter is search your library for a basic plains and put it in your hand. The second chapter is you may discard a card. When you do, return target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it's it lets you discard a card to put a 2-drop or less into play from your graveyard. So
can it be that card or?
Yeah, you could technically discard that card. You can discard that card and then the trigger happens.
Okay, because it's you do a delayed trigger
kind of
or
a
whatever.
Way to get something in cheaper, and then then it flips into Architect of Restoration, which is a 3/4 enchantment creature, a fox monk. It's got vigilance, and whenever it attacks or blocks, make a 1/1 colorless spirit token.
Oh,
so
that's
quite
good.
Strong.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah,
you get a card
like an
out
A-.
of it.
3 mana for a plains, a 3/4, and the ability to get a card back or do the little trick you mentioned. Pretty good deal. I mean, for only 3 mana, you're getting a lot. Like the 3/4 that makes a 1/1 whenever it gets into combat, that's a pretty substantial feature.
Definitely. B+ for restoration?
I kind of think A-.
Do you think so?
The fact that you can discard the planes you got and put it into play means it's kind of a ramp spell too.
Oh, you could just do that every time. Yeah, so you're automatically being spotted that. Yeah, all right. A- for restoration of Ikonjo. It's kind of got it all. All right, this is Kyodai, Soul of Kamigawa. This one better be... Why is this a regular rare? 3 and a white for a legendary creature, Dragon Spirit. But this isn't actually the Dragon Spirit as part of that cycle that we talked about. This is a different one. This one's a 3/3 flash flying legendary Dragon Spirit at rare. And when it enters the battlefield, another target permanent gains indestructible for as long as you control Kyodai. And you can play Wooburg, that's 1 mana of each color, to give it +5/+5 until end of turn.
I mean, again, we're saying this a lot, but that's just because how they've chosen to make cards in this set. What you get at the top level here is already great, which is 4 mana, 3/3 flying flash that can save a creature when it comes into play, even if this then dies later. Like imagine, your 4/4 attacks, they block their 4/4. You play this, make your creature indestructible. Now you win the combat. Now, even if they kill Kyodai later, like you kind of already got paid.
Yep.
And then the fact that you can spend mana of every color to make this +5/+5 is cool, but it doesn't really matter.
No,
that's not really what the card's about. So
it's a little random too, but
yeah, I mean, sure. So basically, I see this card as an A-, and just without the 5-color ability, and you really shouldn't be like bending over backwards to try to make the 5-color ability work.
No, definitely don't. A- for
just put this card in your deck,
Yeah, that's really cool. Next is our first Planeswalker. It's the Wandering Emperor. This is 2 white for a 3 loyalty. It just says Legendary Planeswalker. All right. It's Mythic Rare. This
is the Wanderer. We don't know who she is.
Oh, right. This is her. Okay, she's got her hat off. I see. Flash. The Wandering Emperor has flash, and as long as the Wandering Emperor enter the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities anytime you could cast an instant. Okay, so if you flash it in, you can activate a loyalty ability on your opponent's turn. +1 off of the 3 loyalty. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature against first strike until end of turn. Well, that seems relevant for combat. -1 creates a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. So you could flash this in, activate that, and block with it. That's kind of cool. Or just do it on end step and have a surprise attacker for next turn. The -2 ability, which just does leave the Wandering Emperor still on the battlefield, is exile target tapped creature and you gain 2 life. Dude, this is sweet. This is like a limited Planeswalker. Like, this is awesome. It affects combat super hard and like the timings. This is sweet.
It's also a constructed Planeswalker. This card is really good.
It's going to see play? Okay.
This is a super cool design. An instant speed Planeswalker that like gets to play at instant speed once is really, really cool. Like, I think that's awesome. Actually amazing. So I got to give him credit. I mean, I know I can be critical of some of the design choices, but I got to give him credit when it's great. And I think this is just a really, really cool design. Super powerful card too, because I mean, at the base level, imagine they attack with a 4/4, you play this -2, kill their thing. They've already attacked this turn, so they can't attack the Planeswalker. That's already that sailed. And then you untap. You don't get to make a samurai then. I think they thought of that, right? You can't go kill a creature and then make a 2/2. But then you get to give a creature +1/+1. It gets first strike to on a turn, can probably defend the Wanderer there. The other thing is they attack with a 4/4. You've got a 3/3. You can just play this and give your creature a +1/+1 counter, and it gets first strike until end of turn. Like, that's huge upside as well. Yeah. Or make a samurai and block. Like, all the modes are great.
Yeah,
it's good, and I mean, if you have creatures, it's good if you don't.
Yeah, and I mean, what you said is true. Like, you can't -2 exile a creature and then get a samurai and keep the Wandering Emperor, but you can get a samurai. Like,
yeah, no, you could do that if you needed to.
That's a lot of options.
There's no
right?
way for this to go badly,
No
and there's
way.
ways for it to go incredibly well. This just looks like an A+. Like this is.
I agree.
This is where you're at. So
and a really cool card too.
Yeah,
I
also
love the
very
design.
design.
Great job. All right, what about AO the Dawn Sky? AO.
A+ the Dawn Sky. Yes, I made that joke in my review that every time you cast this, you're like, "Ayo."
Everybody's gonna do that.
It's 3 white for a 5/4 legendary dragon spirit, a mythic rare. It's got flying and vigilance, so 5 mana, 5/4 flying vigilance, and the 2 death triggers because all of these have the 2 death triggers. You get to choose one. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana value 4 or less onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom.
Wow.
So it starts out pretty strong of a cast, kind of like a collected company. You look at the top 7 and you get to put 4 mana value into play. The second one is put 2 +1/+1 counters on each permanent you control that's a creature or vehicle. Each one you control.
One?
That's
What the heck?
Yeah,
Hey,
this card is nuts. So A+, just all these dragons are just unbelievable. If you're lucky enough to open one, slam it. If you open it pack 2, look at your 2 colors and decide which one's weaker. I mean, that's really again, if you've got a big board, this can give you 6 or 8 +1/+1 counters. That's obviously amazing. If you don't, then you can go look at the top 7, put a creature into play, maybe 2.
Yeah, that's awesome. These cards are great. I'm getting higher and higher on the arrest and on the blue arrest.
Yes, those are good ways to handle such things.
What about invoke justice?
So this is 1 white. So again, 4 white. It's sorcery at rare. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among any number of creatures and or vehicles target player controls. So
sure.
For 5 mana, you get back your best permanent, and you get 4 +1/+1 counters.
It's very powerful, very swingy.
Yeah, I mean I
just don't. The 4 mana, the 4 white mana, in addition to the 1 generic, is a lot.
It is. I mean, it's not a small investment here.
Yeah, I just wonder if you can play these. Like this one particularly. Like, obviously, if you're mono white, absolutely, 100%. But if you're not. White's often so curve out dependent, right? It's so needs to do the things that it needs to do on the turns it needs to do them. And just having this thing sit in your hand turn after turn could be a real liability, like the type of thing that if it was just a 5 mana 4/4, you would have won the game 5 turns ago. And instead you're staring at Invoke Justice because you can't cast it. That's the worry I have. It is a big swing in your direction. 4 counters is a lot. And it automatically gives you something to put them on. You're going to get a creature back most of the time with it.
Again, I think this is a build around A where if you can get, close to mono white, then this is interesting. I do think that it's worth noting that, unlike the green one, you do end up in a spot more often where this is not going to work because white decks, like you said, just get more punished for not being able to play all the cards in their hand, don't have ramp, that just not the right strategy to employ for these.
So what do we give a card like this? These are very difficult to grade because if it's in your deck, we're giving you credit for understanding that you need 12, 13, maybe even just be monocolored. And if you're not, you just probably shouldn't have it in your deck in the first place because it's just going to be uncastable too often. Yeah.
I mean, I still think it's kind of like a build around A and the build around being B monocolor or pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Just as simple as that.
Next card is called Farewell. It's 4 white for a sorcery at rare. Choose 1 or more. Exile all artifacts, all creatures, all enchantments, all graveyards. You can choose however many of those things you want.
Yeah, so it's basically Wrath that can get everything, but you can scale up to as many as you want. So at first I was a little cool on this because, again, the 6 mana Wraths aren't really where I want to be because it's hard to do the slow roll play where you don't deploy creatures because 6 is so expensive. But the more I thought about it, I'm actually pretty into this card because if you draft this card, try not to draft an artifact or enchantment base deck. And then when you play against someone who's got that kind of deck, this can be a really lopsided removal spell where you cast this and exile all artifacts and enchantments and not creatures. All of a sudden, your 2 normal creatures survive, and you get brutal. 3 or 4 of their cards.
Dude, that's rough. I didn't think about that.
Because it also does have the failsafe of like, I'm just losing this game. I'm going to cast this and exile all creatures.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that's still a good button to be able to push when you need to, you know?
Exactly. Recognizing that it's weaker than the 4-mana variants is important, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, yes, you can just say, okay, everything's gone, and you'll try to scrap back from there. Okay, you've got me a little more interested in it than I was when I first read it. Grade-wise?
I mean, I think it's a B. I don't think it's like a busted card, but I think it's got some real potential.
Okay. B for farewell. Next is Brilliant Restoration. This is 3 white. Goes in your Invoke Justice deck. This one's a sorcery at rare. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that one.
So that's going to be an F. 7 mana build around. You know, maybe you could do something cool with it once ever, but, just not an important card for the format as far as that goes. All right. Moves us to blue. First blue card is March of Swirling Mist. This is blue X. For an instant, it has that same cost reduction ability, and it says up to X target creatures phase out. And I'll read the reminder text here as well. It says, while they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. Each one phases in before its controller untaps during their next untap step.
I still can't get over how phasing, one of the most ridiculous weird mechanics, is part of just current Magic now. I know why that is. I actually think it's for a pretty good reason, which is you can't keep doing blink effects where something exiles and then comes back because of how many enters the battlefield triggers there are.
Yeah, totally. And also people like to keep their counters and stuff on their creatures.
And this is a modified set, counters and all that. So I understand why this is the way it is, or phasing is the way it is. It is just a funny mechanic. I wouldn't have guessed that's the one they would bring back, you know.
We had it in 1997, and now here it is.
Right. So that being said, what is this card up to? And I think it's up to basically 2 things. The one mode is casting it for 2 mana to just phase out one of your creatures in response to a removal spell, because that does work. It saves your creature. The other mode is to phase out all your opponent's creatures and just attack your opponent for a bunch of damage.
Yes. Those are
pretty legit.
Yeah, one way to view this type of card would be the variants that they put in most sets now, where a creature gets tapped down and doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This is like your opponent goes, I want to go to combat, and you go, okay, March of Swirling Mist for 4. That's all 4 of your creatures. They're gone. Right? My turn, attack you for a whole bunch. You get them back on your next turn.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
mediocre version of the tap down.
That's basically what would end up happening here most of the time.
Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to kill, or do, maybe you have a bunch of ninjas that care about hitting the opponent and getting a bonus or whatever. But yeah, I think that, when it comes to card economy, what you said is easily the most likely thing, which is I save my creature from your removal spell, and therefore I have equalized on cards.
Well, what's worth noting is both modes of this require you to have a bunch of creatures, either creatures to save or the desire to make an alpha strike and kill your opponent.
That's right.
So basically, in a creature heavy deck, especially an aggressive one, I think you would probably put March of Swirling Mist in your deck, because a 2 mana spell that saves your creature from a removal spell plus a late game falter effect where just their whole board disappears, you kill them.
Yes,
that's a good split card. It kind of handles 2 different places. So I think that's a fine place to be. But
the main thing to remember is this does not save you from being behind.
Right. Either way, when you're behind. I mean, if you exile their board and you're behind, this is just a pretty poor way to try to win the game. It's not really going to help advance your strategy at all.
Right. So I would not give it a super high grade. I would give it C- or something.
Yeah, I think it's C-, but if you're an aggressive blue deck with a lot of creatures, which, is a thing that could exist, I would lean towards playing this, I guess.
Yeah, and that definitely is a thing. Also another grown test candidate. Next is Thousand-Faced Shadow. This is blue for a 1/1 human ninja at rare. It's got flying. Oh, I like that. And when Thousand-Faced Shadow enters the battlefield from your hand, if it's attacking, a little foreshadowing here, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. The token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. And as you might have guessed, it has ninjutsu for 2 blue.
So in order for this card to do like the dream it promises you, it's actually pretty convoluted. It's not going to happen very often because you need a creature to be getting through so you can ninja this in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need another different creature to also be attacking.
I see.
At which point it copies that creature, which that's not necessarily like amazing. You attack with a 1/1 flyer and a 3/3, and then you ninja this in, and now it's a 3/3.
Now, but you get to create a copy of that attacking creature. This isn't the copy, right? Okay.
And you get to keep it. So
yeah, and this is just a 1/1 flyer.
This will remain a 1/1 flyer. So you do get value, but again, you have to have an unblocked creature plus another attacking creature.
Honestly, I just like it better as blue 1/1 flyer.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, which is it does still have the fact that in a deck that has ninjas and wants ninjas, a 1-mana 1/1 flyer is a pretty good deal.
And then you get kind of a random, maybe I'll get their ninjutsu ability for later after you return it to your hand.
Yeah. So
okay,
I think Thousand Face Shadow's like a B. Like
yeah,
it has some pretty appealing characteristics. I don't think it's like a bomb rare or anything like that. It's just a solid role player for ninjas decks because again, it works on both sides. Of the whole ninja deal. So there's ways to make use of this regardless of what it is you're trying to do. Okay.
And you're getting in a fair bit of damage if you have that attack actually line up, right?
I mean, there's sometimes when it's going to be amazing. You have that like 4/4 flyer and you can sneak this in alongside the 1/1. Then all of a sudden you hit your opponent for 8 and have 2 4/4 flyers in play. I'm not saying there's not some dreams here.
Yeah, for sure. All right. B for Thousand Face Shadow with some nice upside. The reality chip is next. What is that? It's a 1 and a blue for a 0/4 legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish.
This is the type line winner of the entire set.
Oh my God. I've always wanted a legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish. And now I've got one. It's rare. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Good start, reality chip. As long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. Oh my God. It's like, what's it called? What was that card called? Future Sight?
Yeah.
Reconfigure cost for this bad boy. 2 and a blue. So, I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember it doesn't give stats. It just gives the ability.
That's right.
But because you can look at your top card, you don't ever have to reconfigure and equip this unless you know you're going to get to play your top card. Like, imagine you play this on turn 2 as a blocker. You play a random 3-drop. Turn 4, you untap. You're like, ooh, my top card's a land. So assuming they're tapped out, you're not walking into something. Equip this, play the land right away. You're already up a card. Great.
Sweet. This card is so cool.
It's a very cool card.
Is it good?
I think it's pretty strong. I mean, the main thing to watch out for is if your opponent leaves mana up, don't try to spend your whole turn doing this because it might not always work. Sometimes it's worth going for, but for the most part, it's a dangerous card. Your opponent's going to try to stop you. But imagine if this works and you go reconfigure, play a land, play a spell. All of a sudden, like if they can't kill the creature this is on, they lose. And the genius about this is this still stays in play. So unless they have actual like artifact removal, as long as it can be ensconced safely on a creature, it's actually less vulnerable once you do that.
Oh my God, this card is so cool. Equipment jellyfish. I'm going to need you to grade this though.
It looks like probably a B+. It's pretty slow. I can imagine games where this doesn't like do the thing you really want it to do, but it's a really strong card.
I agree. A+ for the reality chip. the jellyfish of my dreams. Mind Link Mech is next. It's 2 and a blue for a vehicle, an artifact vehicle. It's a 4/3 flying vehicle. It's rare. Its crew cost is just 1. Whenever MindLink Mech becomes crewed for the first time each turn until end of turn, it becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it this turn, except it's a 4/3. It's a vehicle artifact in addition to its other types, and it has flying.
Meanwhile, whenever I'm crewed, I just get yelled at. But
I was going to say, this thing gets bonuses for being crewed.
So
what does it do? It becomes a copy of whatever's crewing it?
So it does, but it stays a 4/3 flyer.
Right.
So basically, This is mostly just a 3-mana 4/3 flying with crew 1, like a vehicle that does that. But I think the main thing to note when you look at this is what it does that is really appealing is that if it has if you have like a ninja deck or a text box, which rewards you for getting in, like anything like that, lifelink, it can provide you a pretty good amount of additional value. A creature heavy deck that can reliably crew this is going to be pretty happy with this just regardless, because that's a pretty good rate. 4 mana for or 3 mana for a 4/3 flyer vehicle hits pretty hard. You play this on turn 3, you're hitting them for 4 on turn 4 most of the time.
Yeah, that's a good card. That's already good. And the extra bonus you get if your creature happens to have, like you said, something that affects combat or whatever is nice. This card's strong.
Yeah, it's a strong card. And I would look for cool abilities to stack onto my creatures if I could, but it's not, mandatory that you end up in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, easily the most important thing about this card are just the raw stats, right? 4/3 flyer, crew 1. That's where you want to be. Speaking of B, I like it at B+. I think this card's going to be really annoying.
I think B+ is good for Mindlink Mech.
This is a pushed vehicle. Next is Tameshi Reality Architect. What does Tameshi do?
So Tameshi is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature, Moonfolk Wizard. Whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This triggers only once each turn. Note that it doesn't matter to whose hand they're returned. It just says when they're returned, draw a card. X and a white is the other ability. X and a white, return a land you control to owner's hand. Return target artifact or enchantment with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield as a sorcery.
What?
So basically,
this card is bizarre.
Okay, it is pretty weird, but what this card does is it's basically a blue-white gold card. Because it's 3 mana for a 2/3, and then you get to pay X and a white and bounce a land, which draws you a card because of the first ability, and then just brings an artifact or enchantment back from the graveyard to play. So you're not really losing tempo. You're returning a land, which is kind of annoying when you're drawing a bunch of cards. But imagine you trade off your 2-drop artifact. You play this on turn 3. If they don't have a kill spell, next turn you're bounce a land, get back my 2/2, draw a card. You're just up multiple cards on the exchange, and it's just a very, very good deal for you.
And then are there realistic scenarios where you're going to benefit from the triggered ability just being there? One or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand. Does that happen?
Not super often. I mean, it definitely could happen.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be.
I think that'll be if you're playing on Arena. Yeah. We're one of those things where the trigger goes on the stack and you're like, oh, right. Cause your opponent bounced their own, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's something that.
Is this card any good?
Oh, it's very good. If you're blue-white, this card's a bomb.
Blue-white. Okay.
I just think it's a blue-white gold card. I think that's mainly how I would approach the card.
Okay. So build around, we'll call it, because you do need to put that effort into it. But what grade do you like? You like B+ for it? You like A-?
I'd say it's closer to an A-. Imagine you play this, if they don't kill it, you're going to win the game, right?
Well, you do have to get some type of artifact enchantment stuff going. That's just going to happen in blue-white though, right? You don't have to work for that.
Not hard to imagine that.
Yeah. Then you're going to win the game for sure. That's a cool card. It's a little weird, but it's cool.
Oh, definitely a weird card.
Yeah.
Yes.
Inventive Iteration is next. This is 3 and a blue for a saga at rare. Chapter 1 is return up to 1 target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. All right, so bounce something. Chapter 2 is return an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. If you can't, draw a card. Interesting that you have to, but if you can't, you get the card. And then chapter 3, it turns into Living Breakthrough, which is a 3/3 flying enchantment creature Moonfolk that says whenever you cast a spell, your opponents can't cast spells with the same mana value as that spell until your next turn. That's kind of rude.
Yeah. That part of it is, I think, not a huge, that's not a huge part of the ability, but
no.
But,
card's good.
I think the card is quite good. I mean, you don't even have to be a build around because you don't have to return an artifact. If you do, it's a bonus, but that is not necessary. So basically, you're paying 4 mana to bounce a creature or planeswalker, but mostly a creature, then draw a card, and then get a 3/3 flyer with upside.
Yeah. That seems really strong. I mean, you're getting a 2-for-1 plus however much you want to value the bounce a card. Maybe not a full card worth of value out of it, but it's coming up on that. So, you're approaching 3-for-1 territory here, and including one of them affecting, or two of them affecting the board directly. Yeah, I'm in for inventive iteration. This is not in that bomb category, but that's a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close to a bomb.
It really is, actually, because you're not losing if you cast this anytime soon.
Imagine you cast this on turn 4.
Yeah. Your opponent's way behind.
Your opponent's just like, well, I'm not going to win this game.
Right. I like A- for inventive iteration.
Yeah, I'm totally in for A-.
What about Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh?
So it's 2 blue for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Tezzeret. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate. So that's not the most exciting.
That's the static ability. Okay.
And then the +1 is draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact. So it's kind of like a mini thirst for knowledge, The -2 is target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it isn't a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. And that's permanent. So you play this, you minus on one of your baubles or whatever, and now you get a 4/4.
Okay.
And the -6 is you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card.
Whoa, it's 6? That's cool.
Yeah. So overall, you do need artifacts for this to be good. It's a build around.
Okay.
Because the biggest payoff here, I think, is the -2.
Yeah.
Where you're getting an emblem with or you're getting a 4/4 that helps defend Tezzeret or attack your opponent or what have you, and that is quite strong. That is where you want to be.
And if it is a vehicle, it just becomes the crude version forever.
It becomes a 4/4 with the abilities it would have.
It says if it isn't a vehicle.
Oh, if it isn't a vehicle, sorry.
So does that just mean that it just is? It's a crude vehicle for the rest of the game, basically.
Yes, if it becomes permanently crude.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. So,
like you said, build around though.
It's like a builder on A, because if you have a lot of artifacts in your deck, you're like play Tezzeret, -2, have a 4/4, and then +1 being able to block and or draw 2 cards, then discard a card, just getting value over and over again. Like it does a lot for you.
Yeah, and there is a pretty short route to that ultimate as well. Like you play him on 4, plus it to 5. Next turn 6, and then you can ultimate the turn after that. That's about as quick as you're going to get any ultimate on a planeswalker for the most part.
Yeah, and then whenever one of your artifacts becomes tapped, drawing a card is pretty hard to beat in the long game.
Yeah, as long as you have artifacts that tap, for anything, right? Like, because you can't just tap stuff willy-nilly, but if you have anything that's just tap for anything, then you're good to go. Including your artifact creatures attacking even,
Yeah.
You want to go for 2 at once. Build around A for Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh.
Yeah, just have a lot of artifacts. This card will deliver.
Here's the Invoke for blue. It's 1 blue for a sorcery. It's rare. Gain control of target artifact or creature. Untap it. These effects are extremely powerful in limited. Untapping it is actually a fairly big deal on an effect like this, because there are times when you need to steal your opponent's creature, but you need to be able to block if you're way behind, and this solves that. But you're facing down quad blue here.
Quad blue's a lot, and if you can make that work, then this card is going to be probably the best card in your deck, because 5 mana to permanently steal something is awesome, and the untap is good because it frequently has attacked you the turn before. So
there you go. Same thing that we said before. Yeah. If you can do it, if you can cast it, it's an A. Otherwise, you probably don't want it in your deck. What about Kyrie, the Swirling Sky?
All right, A+ time. Let's see. 4 blue for a 6/6 flying ward 3. This is the legendary Dragon Spirit at Mythic. So 6 mana, 6/6 flying ward 3.
Get in there.
Pretty good. When it dies, you can either A, return any number of target non-land permanents with total mana value 6 or less to its owner's hand. So bounce up to 6 mana worth of creatures.
Cool.
Or B, mill 6 cards, then return up to 2 instant and or sorceries from your graveyard to your hand.
It's funny because these are, probably the weakest of the when it dies abilities that we've seen. Weakest combo, but also this thing never dies. It's got ward 3. Like, how do they kill it?
Well, what I really like is they've done a good job with all the abilities of making it so the situations where one is good, the other is not great, and the situation where one isn't great, the other's good. So like it just, if you're behind, bounce their biggest creature or 2 small creatures. If you're ahead, draw 2 spells.
Yep.
It covers your bases so nicely. So yes, carry the Swirling Sky. I'm just gonna give it an A plus. It's a 6-mana 6/6 flying ward 3, and if they do end up killing it, you either get some time because you bounce their things, or you just draw 2 cards, assuming you've got a decent mix of spells in your deck or what have you.
Yeah. So yet another A. All right, only one more of those dragons to go. We'll see if they can complete the cycle. I like your chances, Luis. Last blue card though is Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. This is 5 blue for a 5/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor. It's mythic. And it says whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. And whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. Wow, that's the most annoying card ever.
Oh, this card's great. Like,
that's incredible.
The first ability means if you untap with this, you probably are in really good shape because it's hard to imagine losing when you're copying a good bounce spell or removal spell or artifact. It doesn't copy creatures, but everything else.
Yep.
And then the second part means it probably will let you untap because if they have a removal spell, they need to have another blocker spell to play first. And that's just not that easy to do. That's
hard to do, especially this late in the game. This card costs 7 mana, so people are generally kind of have spent their hands by this point. Yeah, so in order to kill it, they have to be able to cast 2 spells in one turn. And they have to have enough mana to be able to cast both in the same turn. So that's crazy.
So I would give an A- to Jin-Gitaxias. It's 7 mana, but you're going to get to untap with it most of the time, and it's going to dominate from there. 7 mana spell. It doesn't help you that much when you're behind, but it's still a 5/5.
Yep.
Still block with it. So
still block with it. So
A- for Jin-Gitaxias. Really, really absurd. This card's going to be pretty near the top of your opponent playing a card, it triggering on like Arena, and your opponent just sitting there. Oops.
Pause. Scoop. Next game. That moves us to our last color of the monocolored stuff here. It's black. This is March of Wretched Sorrow. So this is the March for black. It's black X instant with that same cost reduction ability. And it says March of Wretched Sorrow deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life. Hey, they kept it easy. That's a nice card.
Yeah, I mean, this is solid. You would play this without the cost reduction.
Yep.
And you'll play it with the cost reduction too.
That's right.
It's just a solid removal spell. The gaining X life makes it so this kind of brings you back from behind and makes up for the fact that you did spend a little bit. You all spent a little bit more mana, or generally spent a little bit more mana, right? They're 4 mana 3/3. You probably spent 4 or 5 mana, overall to kill a lot of the time. You can overkill things to gain more life.
Definitely. That's
no reason not to do that. And overall, if you need to pitch some cards to gain extra life or to kill something bigger, that works too. Look like a B+ to me.
B+ for March of Wretched Sorrow. Next is Blade of the Oni. This is 1 and a black for a 3/1 artifact creature equipment demon. It's a mythic rare. It's a 3/1 with menace. And it has reconfigure. So the equipped creature has base power and toughness 5/5, has menace, and is a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. So what's the reconfigure cost? It's actually pretty low. It's 2 black, which is high, equipped, but you're getting a lot here. It turns anything into a 5/5 menace.
And it's a 2 mana 3/1 menace.
God dang. So it's going to get in for like 9 and then jump on something else and finish you off?
Yeah, when this card comes down on turn 2, your opponent's just in a world of pain.
Yeah.
I mean, Blade of the Oni looks amazing. This is a bomb. It's an A. It's great early, great late. Just the kind of card that, again, your opponent's going to play it. And you're just going to be like, all right.
Do you knock it at all for the fact that it has 1 toughness, and that's when it's in its vulnerable state? Like, look, it dies to probably any removal spell in the set, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, that is true.
I don't like the argument that it dies to removal makes a card worse, like it must be killed. But I do like the idea that, there's going to be a window for you most likely to kill a creature, and if you have a removal spell, this does that. Yeah.
It still is like a really, one of your better cards, and it's kind of annoying that the shock can kill it. But you can try to reconfigure it onto things. For 6 mana, you can play and put this on your 2/2.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a 5/5 menace. And again, reconfigure equipment are much safer on creatures than on the battlefield without being on a creature.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm pointing out is that, there is probably a window to kill it. Still.
Yeah, I mean that, but I think part of the strength of the card is that it's a 2 mana play that's
Totally.
relevant.
Totally.
And one mistake people are going to make with this card is they're going to play this on turn 2 and not trade it for their opponent's 3/2. Mm-hmm. When it's like, you need to trade off the creature here. It's, it's, no one wants to do that, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah, totally. What do you like? A-, A for Blade of the Oni?
I'd just give it an A. I mean, this is going to be one of the better cards in your deck when you have access to it. It's just going to be very strong,
Okay, what about Mukotai Soul Ripper?
This is 1 and a black for an artifact vehicle at rare. It's a 4/3 with crew 2. So 2 mana, 4/3 crew 2. Solid. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice another artifact or creature. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on the Soul Ripper, and it gains menace until end of turn.
Wow, very aggressive.
So what you end up doing with this is, if you have ways to make cheap artifacts or creatures that you can sacrifice, you can play this. Crew attack as a 5/4 menace, then attack as a 6/5 menace. And the game's like pretty close to over at that point.
Yeah, and I mean that's a
lot of damage.
Right, and you can plan it out, right, to say like you're not going to have blocks for it, and I can sacrifice like this time and one other time and still have the same clock.
Yeah.
Really aggressive. I mean, it's also an okay blocker. I mean, vehicles block sometimes, they make it hard for your opponent to get in because they effectively are like 2 creatures, right? They kill your 2/2, then you can just go, okay, crew up the Soul Ripper.
Yeah.
Looks like a B to me.
I would think it's like a B-. Like, I think you're not always going to sack for value. And like a 4/3 with crew 2 is good, but it's not like.
It's just okay for the 2 mana. Yeah. It does make it pretty easy to play this on 2, and then by turn 3, you're almost guaranteed to have a crew, like if you have a normal creature deck or whatever. What about Tribute to Hirobi?
This is a rare saga. It's 1 and a black. The first 2 chapters are the same. Your opponent creates a 1/1 black rat rogue creature token.
My opponent?
So you give them 2 rats, and then it flips into Echo of Death's Wail. It's a 3/3 flying haste enchantment creature spirit. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of all rat tokens. Give me those back. And when it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature, and if you do, draw a card.
Oh, man. It just swings right back in your direction. That's crazy.
I think this card's really good because the idea is you play this, you ignore the 2 rats. Like, you don't attack into them, you don't block them, and you get a 3/3 flying haste that gives you those 2 rats back, and then you attack, sack a rat, and draw a card.
Yep.
It's a pretty big game. That seems like a good deal to me.
Now, what's the backfire look like? Your opponent has the ability to sacrifice the rats for some value. They get to hit you for a couple.
Yeah, those are both some of the drawbacks,
Not too bad. You still get the 3/3 either way.
Yeah, I think this card can be among the worst top decks because you're like, play this, you get a 1/1. Next turn, you get a 1/1. It's done nothing so far.
That's rough. That's really rough. Yeah.
But this is one of the best cards when it all goes according to plan. When they don't sack the rats and you don't lose them, all of a sudden you get like a 3/3 plus and haste, so attack right away, plus a card, plus a rat, and next turn you probably sack a rat to get another card too.
Yeah. You could end up with a 3/3 flying haste and 2 cards in hand for 2 mana. All right. I like it. I like it at B+ for Tribute to Hirobi. The downside is real. Like if you draw this late and you're not in a great spot, it could get kind of ugly for you.
Yeah. B+. I mean, it's going to be an A when you play it on turn 2, but Definitely. It's going to be a D or F when you draw it off the top of your deck sometimes. That's kind of the trade-off you're getting.
That's right. What about Biting Palm Ninja?
This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 human ninja at rare. It's got a mouth with a mouth with teeth on its palm.
Never a fan of that.
It's got ninjutsu of 2 and a black, and it enters the battlefield with a menace counter on it. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a menace counter, and when you do, that player reveals their hand, and you exile a non-land card from it. They don't get the card back at any point. It's just straight up, it's gone.
But that costs you the menace ability?
Yeah, so basically you get to trade off menace to take their best card. generally worth it.
That's worth it.
But it's a 3/3 menace for 3. So not hard to get it through, and then it takes their best card. I think this card is pretty strong.
So this is one that you're very likely to just play on 3.
Oh yeah, because you're not even really getting that much of advantage by ninjutsuing it. I don't think, because you're spending 3 mana to put a 3/3 into play, and it already has menace, so it's already like pretty good threatening in terms of like easy to get through. You don't need much help on this one. So imagine a 3/3 for 3. They can't block it. You take their best card. It's already a fantastic deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't remove the counter and you just have a menace and you're just sitting there. And the fact that his ninjutsu is upside. It's not, you're not going to use it that often, but it is real upside. So yeah, this card is excellent pretty much everywhere.
I like B+ for Biting Palm Ninja.
I'm considering A- because
it is a 2-for-1.
When you play it on turn 3, like your opponent's like, this sucks. I'm going to lose my best 4-drop. You know,
It's true. Okay, so B+, A- for Biting Palm Ninja. Next is Nashi Moon Sage's Scion. This is 1 black for a 3/2 legendary rat ninja at Mythic. It says, whenever Nashi deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of each player's library. Until end of turn, you may play one of those cards. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. And it has ninjutsu for 3 and a black. Holy smokes.
I'm in for this one.
Wow. So you get to see them both. You are picking between one of your cards, one of your opponent's cards, but you can play it for free. And if it's a land, you can just play it.
Yep.
Wow. No wonder they made the ninjutsu cost more than the casting cost on this.
Yeah, this one is one of the ones where you really want to hit them. Like the on-hit trigger is so strong that you're really into hitting them. But I mean, it's also 3 mana 3/2. Mostly you're going to ninja this because you get the best of both of your libraries. So you're getting that nice 2-for-1. You also get a huge mana advantage because yes, it costs life. So sometimes that's actually going to be worse. But sometimes you're like, ninja this on turn 4, play a 5-drop.
Yeah. You're like, cool, I'm at 15, go.
Yeah, it's just absurd. You know?
Yeah, that Nashi Moon Sage's Scion seems really cool. And yes, I would prioritize trying to get the ninjutsu in as much. Or, if your opponent has had a slow start, you can play it, bounce, tap, kill their blocker, and hit them with it, and then you're really living the dream.
A- for Nashi?
Yeah, I think so. I think a good comparison would be any of the types of cards that say when this hits your opponent, draw a card. This is like way better than that. You get the choice of 2 cards, one from you, one from them, and you don't have to pay the mana for the dang thing. So amazing. What does Soul Transfer do?
So this is 1 black for a sorcery at rare. Choose one, and if you control an artifact and an enchantment, you can choose both. Exile target creature or planeswalker, or return target creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand.
Okay.
Good, great deal. I mean, 1 black sorcery, exile target creature or planeswalker. All right, we're good. We're happy. And then if you happen to control both artifact and enchantments or an artifact and enchantment when you have this, you also get to return something. And in a pinch, you could also just straight up return something, though I think that's obviously going to be used a little less frequently. Yeah,
mainly just a good solid removal spell, but it does give you that high upside. Is it the white-black deck, the one that keys in on having both?
Yeah, white-black is kind of the main theme, but really, if you take this early, because you will, because it's a good removal spell, just look for opportunities to try to sneak an enchantment creature or something into your deck. Like, it's just not hard to figure out ways to get a little bit of extra value from this, and when you do, it's just going to be great,
So do you want to go B+ again on this, or does the extra bonus get it into the A- category?
I'm thinking A- on this.
Okay.
It's just really strong. It's just high upside, high downside, or low downside is just really where I want to be. All right, I got the next one. We've got Tatsunari Toad Rider is 2 and a black for a 3/3 legendary creature, human ninja at rare. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kaimi, create Kaimi. Legendary 3/3 green frog creature token with, this is nested triggers, the token has this triggered ability. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life, and you can play 1 green-blue hybrid mana. Tatsunari Toad Rider and target frog you control can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with flying or reach. At some point, they're going to come clean, right? Robo Rosewater is behind a lot of these designs.
They're just like copy pasting from Robo. It's an incredible amount of text. But
is it worth it? Well, I mean, power level wise, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a very strong card. Design wise, well, this is a lot for sure.
This is a lot. But basically, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you have this thing out, you get another 3/3.
Yeah.
And that 3/3 has a static ability, and this thing has an activated ability that lets you attack with both 3/3s a lot more often.
Yep. Those things are all accurate.
It's a good card.
Oh, it's a very strong card. I would be quite happy to put this card in my deck.
You get a green and black frog creature. Okay. Yeah, I would say, assuming that you do any minimal building around where you have some enchantments in your deck, I think you're in the A range here with this pretty easily. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, as long as you have a couple enchantments, then you should be able to go pretty nuts with this card.
And it's only 2 mana, although it is it's blue or green that you need to spend on it. So, I guess there's a chance where you don't have that if you're the black-white deck, for example.
And I guess the ability is worded this way because they didn't want you to be able to give flying on defense. It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why not just give flying? But in any case, 3 mana 3/3 with massive upside. Make sure you have like 3 or 4 enchantments in your deck. You don't need more than that.
Yep.
Take the card. Obviously, if you have 10 enchantments in your deck, that is just better for you. So, I'm not saying you shouldn't have enchantments.
Tansanari Toad Rider is an A.
Yep.
What about Hidetsugu Devouring Chaos? There was other cards named after Hidetsugu.
Hidetsugu's Second Right. One of the sweetest cards in the history of the game. I think that card's awesome. Hidetsugu Devouring Chaos is 3 and a black for a 4/4 legendary ogre demon at rare. You can pay black and sacrifice a creature, scry 2. So not a tap ability, just black, sack a creature, scry 2.
Mm-hmm.
2 and a red, tap, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. When you exile a non-land card this way, Hidetsugu Devouring Chaos deals damage equal to the exiled card's mana value to any target.
What?
So 4 mana 4/4, and you pay 3 and tap it, exile the top card, and then if it just nugs anything, like your opponent, their creature, whatever, equal to the mana cost, and you can pay a black and sack a creature to scry 2, which lets you set it up such that you're gonna hit something good.
And this is a 4 mana 4/4 on top of all that.
And it's a 4 mana 4/4. Yeah.
Dang. I'm kind of surprised this is a regular rare. Like Hidetsugu's kind of a famous character name, know. But at any rate, that's an A. I guess the one caveat is that you do need red to activate the really powerful part. The black sacrifice a creature scry 2 is not, game-changingly amazing. It's fine. But 2 and a red tap and all that other stuff, that is GG. So you either need, a random red ability off of a dual land, or you just need to be straight up black-red to really take advantage.
This is a B in a deck that cannot use the red ability, and an A in a deck that can.
Yep. All right, Invoke Despair. This is 1 black for a sorcery. It's rare. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If they can't, they lose 2 life and you draw a card. Then repeat this process for an enchantment and a planeswalker. No. I mean, I'd play it if I could cast it again like the others, because you're probably going to get, like, they sack a creature and you draw a card or 2.
Well, yeah, it's like they sack a creature and you draw 2 cards, they lose 4 life.
Yeah,
and then,
it's awesome.
Yeah, and then you sack, or they sack a creature and an enchantment, and you draw a card and they lose 2 life.
Yeah, see, that's awesome too. But I'm just turned
really
off by the quad black. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the same as the other ones.
In that, like, the other ones.
It's fantastic if you can cast it, and you're not always going to be able to do so.
All right, this is the last of the dragons. They saved it for the last card of the colors here. It's Junji the Midnight Sky. Does it meet the bar?
All right, it's 3 black for a 5/5 flying menace. Well, menace on flying is not the best.
That's a little of the 7/7 with death touch stuff you talked about. But.
So 5/5 flying menace for 5, and when it dies, either each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life. Okay. Or put target non-dragon creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose 2 life. Yeah, we got there.
He got there.
I mean, 5-mana 5/5 flying. When it dies, you get the best creature in either graveyard because your opponent's too onto the battlefield under your control, and you lose 2 life. You're going to choose this maybe 8 out of 10 times. If there's no good creatures, or you're too low on life, or they have like 2 cards in their hand, or they're at 2 life, make them discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. There's just no getting out of this. The best case scenario for your opponent is this is like a 3-for-1.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the best case is they exile it or something. But like, yeah, the reality is this card is fantastic, and you're gonna be really happy when you end up opening any of these dragons.
They did it again. The Mythic Dragon cycle, all A's.
All A pluses, I would actually argue.
Probably, yeah. Gold cards?
Yeah, let's take a look at the gold cards.
All right, first one is Kaito Shizuki, and this is 1 blue black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker at Mythic. Static ability at the beginning of your end step. If Kaito entered the battlefield this turn, he phases out.
They're really playing with what they can do with planeswalkers. I like it. I think that's really cool.
Fun. So basically saying your opponent can't attack him on that opening turn.
Yes.
3 loyalty +1, draw a card, then discard a card unless you attacked this turn. That's that's cool because of the phasing thing. -2, so you get to keep Shizuki here on 1 loyalty. You get a 1/1 blue ninja creature token with this creature can't be blocked. And then there is an ultimate, but this looks a little bit Dream World here. It's -7, and you have to start at 3 and go up by 1. You get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a blue or black creature card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle. Yeah, sure, whatever. Just going to ignore that part. How good is +1 draw a card, then discard unless you attacked? Seems fine. And then create a 1/1 unblockable for the -2. So this is a good balanced 3 loyalty planeswalker, right? Like they hit a nice balance here.
This isn't the strongest planeswalker in the world, but
right.
I like what it's doing here. First of all, you do really want to be in the ninja deck, and if you're blue-black, you're a little more likely to be, because getting 1/1 ninjutsu or ninjas that make it so you can get your ninjas through is great. Pushes attacking with the +1 and all that. And then one of the things that I think is pretty cool is it always has a 1-turn window in terms of your opponent isn't going to attack you, get to attack Kaito for a turn. So you get a turn to set up, which is especially nice on like a card drawing planeswalker. Mm-hmm. So what you're going to end up doing with Kaito is like you attack because you don't need to have something back to block for him. Mm-hmm. +1 it and draw a card. And then next turn, maybe you leave back a blocker or you set up, making a ninja or something to protect him. I think it's good. I think it's overall pretty good.
Yeah, it also lets you have a cool line of play where you play it on 3, -2 to make a ninja. It phases out. Then it's back on your turn, attack with the ninja, +1 and draw the card. And, that way you keep your board state and all that too. So either way works out really well. Cool card. To me, this is the sweet spot for planeswalkers. Like, I'd like to see more planeswalkers like this. And whenever they hit one like this, I'm usually pretty happy. Yes, it isn't this headlining, oh my God card, but that's okay. There needs to be some room for these planeswalkers to just be simply good or fit a deck. And when they hit one like this, I like.
Looks like a B plus.
Yeah. All right. What about Satoru Umezawa?
See if you can live up to his ancestors.
Is this the Umezawa, or was that somebody else? Like, is this the guy with the jite, or is this his friend?
I assume it's like Toshiro Umezawa's, descendant or whatever. It's 1 blue-black for a 2/4 legendary human ninja at rare. Whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 in your hand and the rest on the bottom. And it only happens once each turn. And each creature in your hand has ninjutsu 2 blue-black. So he's the ninja lord, where it's actually kind of funny where if you have tons of ninjas, the second ability doesn't do that much because they already have ninjutsu, but it makes the first ability really good. And if you don't have anything for the first ability, of course, he gives you that by giving you the second ability. So pretty cool stuff. Overall, say 3 mana, 2/4, and then every time one of your creatures gets through unblocked, you have the option of paying 4 to put something into play and draw a card off it. You get to look at your top 3 and take the best one.
Yeah. It works for me. It counts himself too, right? Like you could just play him on 3. If your opponent doesn't have a great block, just ship in there.
Yeah, and a 2/4 is pretty good on turn 3. Like your opponent's probably not going to be able to block profitably there.
Right. Lots of 2/2s, 3/2s on that turn. I'm into it. Look, this is another good balanced design to me. This thing isn't crazy. The ninjutsu cost is expensive in gold, but if you do get to pull it off, it doesn't affect the board directly. Like you're exchanging creatures, so you're still kind of at parity there. I like Satoru Umezawa. This is just a cool design. I would give it a B. Like this type of card, I'm definitely interested in my blue-black deck, and
I think it's a B. I think that a lot of games it's going to play out clunkier than you might think. Like I don't think you're going to be able to spend 4 mana to try to draw a card and get a creature into play by bouncing a creature very many times over the course of the game.
Right.
But it's a good source of recurrent card advantage. It's threatening. Your opponent has this in play. You're not, you're kind of worried about what's going to happen, right?
Well, I mean, because remember, you could just put in 7-drop in with it.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the range. So.
Yeah, so pretty cool. What about Katose the Silent Spider?
Katose, she is 3 blue-black for a 4/4 legendary human ninja at rare. When Katose enters the battlefield, exile target card other than a basic land from an opponent's graveyard. Search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. For as long as you control Katose, you can play one of the exiled cards and spend mana of any color to play it. So
it's a little tough.
Well, basically 5 mana 4/4 that lets you play the best card out of their graveyard, assuming she survives long enough for you to cast it.
But don't you have to find an additional copy of that card?
No, because you can exile a card from their graveyard and just play that card.
So the exile is a bonus. Oh, I see.
The exile is a bonus for like constructed or whatever.
Oh,
so basically how this is going to play out is you're going to play this and exile their like 3 mana removal spell. Then they have 1 turn to kill Katose because you have to control her to get the value. But if they don't, then you get to play that card next turn.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah, it's solid. You also have the ability to like play her and play the spell in the same turn if later in the game. Like imagine they have a 2 mana removal spell, just wait till turn 7 or something.
Mm-hmm.
This looks like a B, like a 5 mana 4/4 that has a good 1-shot ability that they can kind of get out of. They have a turn usually to get out of it by killing her.
Yeah, solid 2 for 1. Next is Hidetsugu Consumes All. This is a Mythic Rare saga. It's 1 black-red. Chapter 1 is destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. Well, that doesn't really do much. Chapter 2 is exile all graveyards. What is this, like a modern card or something? This isn't great for us.
Yes, I think it is.
Then it transforms into Vessel of the All-Consuming, which is a 3/3 trample enchantment creature ogre shaman. And whenever Vessel of the All-Consuming deals damage, just to anything, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever it deals damage to a player, if it has dealt 10 or more damage to that player this turn, they lose the game.
That's essentially flavor text, because if you hit them with a 10/10 Vessel, I would imagine they lose the game.
Probably dead. Yeah.
This ability probably doesn't even trigger most of the time because they're dead.
And it needs to survive to start building up counters.
For a 3/3 trample that you have to wait 2 turns for, and then whenever it deals damage, it gets a +1 counter. But that's damage to creatures too, but it has to survive combat.
I'm off it.
No, this card looks awful. I would say this looks like an F. I just don't think it's worth waiting that long. Maybe you side it in if, like, for some reason they have some deck that is like very vulnerable to this or something. But no.
I agree. Yeah, F for Hidetsugu Consumes All. Next is Satsuki the Living Lore. This is green-white for a 1/3 legendary human druid at rare. Has the ability tap, put a lore counter on each saga you control. You can only activate this at sorcery speed. So what does that do? That just turbos those forward? Like you still get all this stuff, you just get it now?
Yeah, but you don't get any extra stuff. It just happens faster.
Okay. So, but like you have this out, you play a saga, chapter 1 happens, you tap this, chapter 2 happens, and you're just turboing. Also says when Satsuki, the Living Lore dies, choose up to 1. Return target saga or enchantment creature you control to its owner's hand. Wow. Or return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand. Jeez, this thing is just all in on sagas. That's crazy.
Yeah, this is very clearly a build around where it's like a build around C where if you have 2 or more sagas, I'd probably play this card. Or enough enchantment creatures, because a 2-mana 1/3 that dies and gets an enchantment creature back, that's not the worst.
I mean, it just bounces it to your hand, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry. You can only get sagas from the graveyard.
Yeah.
Good call.
Medium.
This looks like a build around C.
Yeah, it's like a build around C. I mean, I want to do the thing, but come on.
If you've got a bunch of sagas, like, yeah, this card's probably fine. Otherwise, probably shouldn't be running this one.
Right. I also wonder how often the difference between winning a game and losing a game is that you got your saga 1 turn earlier, like triggered 1 turn earlier.
I think
it certainly matters, but it's not.
I think it's mostly for
getting one back from the yard.
The 1/3 that dies and gets the saga back, or maybe bounces it.
Good luck, Setsuki. Greasefang Okiba Boss is next. 1 black-white for a 4/3 legendary rat pilot. Things that Richard Garfield did not imagine would happen with his game at Rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So I can offer you a 4/3 for 3 mana.
All right.
So that we're already at like a B. That thing's just a slammer. Great for crewing stuff. Great for just getting in. This part's a little weird, right? You have to somehow have a vehicle in your yard to make this a thing.
But you do get a vehicle, like if in a deck
it's
with
insane
vehicles,
if you do.
This just gets the card back right away. Like you get to keep the card.
Yeah. So it's great there. Basically, this is kind of a classic, like high floor and pretty high ceiling type card. You know, it's already like, I would give it a B, and then I'd probably bump it to a B plus if you're doing any vehicular attacking.
Getting up to some vehicular manslaughter here.
Rat slaughter, as it were.
I mean, this card is going to be unbelievably good in some situations.
Definitely.
And a 3-mana 4/3 doesn't need to do a whole lot to be impressive. So I would be plus on Greasefang.
Yeah.
You get one card back, you really were ahead of the game.
You did it. Yeah. And it affects it now too. So basically the idea is to trade off your vehicles, right? Like try to just trade them for something on the other side at any cost.
It's kind of unfortunate because vehicles don't die very easily because they tend to be kind of bigger or have evasion. Like that's kind of why you're playing them. So, but if you can discard a vehicle for value and then get it back.
That's some serious business. What about Spirit Sister's Call?
This is a 3 black-white. It's an enchantment of Mythic Rare. I don't know what the text does, and it does a lot. So I'm guessing it's either going to be like an A or an F. At the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with the chosen card. Trending towards F with this text.
Yep.
If you do, return the chosen card to the battlefield, and it gains. If this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Oh, we got there. It's an F.
All right. I'm going to say we're going to put Spirit Sister's Call right to voicemail.
Yes. Basically, what this does is it lets you exchange. Every turn, you get to exchange permanents. So you get to sack a bad artifact to get a good artifact back, that sort of thing. But it's a lot of setup and it's not a lot of payoff. Like, yeah, I mean, you get to sack and your worst creature turns into your best creature. But first of all, when the creature dies, it never comes back again. Okay, that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to have this card, and you have to have a good creature in your graveyard and a bad creature you want to sack.
Yeah.
It is every turn, so you do get like a recurring source of value here. I don't know. It's probably not an F, but it's not a very good card, I don't think. No,
this setup cost to make this thing like actually good seems very high. And in the times when it's not, it's 5 mana for a do nothing enchantment. Like,
yeah,
no, thank you.
You can generally do better.
Yep. Igonjo Uprising is next. It's red, white, X for a sorcery rare. And you get X 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. They gain menace and haste until end of turn. Each opponent creates X -1 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. So they get 1 fewer than you?
They get 1 fewer, and because you have menace and haste, and yours have vigilance always, but menace and haste till end of turn, like you make 4 tokens, they get 3, then you attack with those 4, and they can block 1 of those 4 with their 3.
I see.
Right, and if they have another creature now, they can block 2. But
so you're supposed to win the game the turn you cast this.
Yeah, or just get in for a bunch of damage, and then you might not win the game, but they probably have to do some trades, and then they can't really attack you back very effectively because you have vigilance, right? Your samurai sit there and are ready to roll. So I don't think that this is. I don't think that this is an easy to evaluate card. Is what I don't think. Like, I can see games where you spend 6 mana and you attack for 8, and they can block like 2 of it. In which case, you spent 6 mana, they took 4, and you made 2 2/2s. That doesn't sound very good.
Man, I feel like if the game ends the turn you cast it, then, who cares what they get out of the deal? But every other scenario feels like you're giving them kind of a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
Like they just end up being a wash.
Yeah, I don't think I'm too in on a Ganjo Uprising. I guess one way to like make use of this and get value from this is you have an effect that's like giving all your creatures +1/+1 or something, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because then you end up in a spot where your opponent doesn't get as much value as you do.
The real question is just like, if I spend 6 mana on this and I get 4 of these things, can I end the game there, or can I put them on the ropes meaningfully? And it feels like you kind of need to win like that turn, or else you're just kind of giving your opponent a whole bunch of stuff and not really getting that far ahead. I think I would give Ganjo Uprising a B to start with, and then we'll play it out. This is a particularly difficult card to judge because it could just end a lot of games where you play this, and remember, you have your other creatures too. You just slam with everything, and you're like, I just did 8 to you. Game's over.
It gets pretty disgusting. Like when you scale up mana wise, right? Like when you're paying 8 mana for this, you're talking about a lot of damage.
Tons of damage. Because remember, you get all your other creatures too. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to start with B for a Ganjo Uprising.
B for a Ganjo Uprising. I mean, see it go a lot of different ways.
Yeah. What about Risona Asari Commander?
She's 1 red/white for a 3/3 legendary creature, human samurai rare with haste. 3 mana, 3/3 haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, if it doesn't have an indestructible counter on it, put an indestructible counter on it. When combat damage is dealt to you, remove an indestructible counter from her.
Whatever. I like 3/3. I like 3 mana, 3/3 haste just fine in my red/white deck. This whole indestructible dance, I don't really care about.
No, I don't think it's very good because you're going to end up in a spot where like if you hit them with your 3/3, which is not the easiest thing to do, it's indestructible until they hit you back. There's a lot of ways for them to get out of it. So yeah, I'm not super thrilled about that. No,
but I do like 3 mana, 3/3 haste. Yeah, so I would still give it a B.
Yeah, I mean, 3 mana, 3/3 haste is just one of the best uncommons typically, or a high tier common. So
right,
I'm pretty happy with it.
What does Ryu Storm's Edge do?
So Ryu Storm's Edge is 2 red/white for a 3/3 legendary human samurai at rare. It has first strike, and whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, untap it. If it's the first combat phase of the turn, there's an additional combat phase after this turn.
I like that, especially in this deck, right, where you're getting ostensibly getting a whole bunch of one of these things attacked alone, and it's getting a bunch of bonuses, and you get to do it again.
I mean, 4 mana, 3/3 first strike is pretty appealing to start with, yeah. And then you end up in a spot where you get to get multiple, like you get to double up on the thing that you really want because you're attacking with one big samurai or one big warrior, and then now you get to run that back. That's like kind of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think this, and it probably curves really nicely here too. Just playing it on 4 and jamming with the one that you had, and then getting another combat step. This card seems really good. It reminds me of one of the first constructed decks I played, which was around. Do you remember that deck with? Oh man, what was
the Bant deck?
Yeah, that Bant deck with
the Bant dude who gives you an extra attack, the Finest Hour guy,
and the Finest Hour itself too.
Yeah,
yeah, it reminds me a little bit of that, where that was an Exalted deck where you would attack, get bonuses from Exalted, and then get another combat step to do the same. And this is similar. I would go B+ on Ryu Storm's Edge, probably an A- in the deck.
Yeah, I would say that sounds about right. Like B+ A- seems pretty good for Ryu.
Tamiyo Completed Sage is next, and this is one that got a lot of attention when it got spoiled. Mainly, I think, because of the power level, but also the mana cost is kind of a standout. The mana cost is 2 green, blue, and then a split hybrid of Phyrexian blue or Phyrexian green, which if you've never played with that, you can pay 2 life. And so you can either play blue, green, or 2 life for that. So it's a 5 mana planeswalker, but you can get it down for on turn 4 if you want, if you're willing to pay the 2 life. It's also got 5 loyalty. And it says, completed. That's a static ability, which says the Phyrexian can be paid with blue, green, or 2 life. If life was paid, this planeswalker enters the battlefield with 2 fewer loyalty counters. So if you do play Tamiyo on 4, you're going to get a 3 loyalty. If you pay the mana, then you're going to get it for 5. +1 ability is tap up to 1 target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Very nice. -X. So this is going to vary quite a bit on whether you pay the mana or the life, but it says exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card. Kind of cool. And then there is a -7. And again, this is going to be loyalty dependent, but the ultimate is create Tamiyo's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with spells you cast cost 2 less to cast and tap, draw a card.
And they said that they couldn't get a lot of text onto cards. Oh, no.
They didn't say that. So this card seems really great.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot going on. You kind of don't want to play the Phyrexian cost. Like, you would rather play this for 5 because getting it a turn sooner and a mana less is not like two loyalty tokens is a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're trying to use like the -X ability or what have you. Mm-hmm. But the card is a very strong card.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 mana for 5 loyalty and then tap and they don't untap. Like you're doing the thing that you always want to do, which is you're protecting yourself, right, from one thing. Like a planeswalker that can do that typically is one of the strongest things you could be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if it was just that +1 ability, this card would be good. Like if it was just sitting there, just like locking down, every other turn. Okay, lock down that one, lock down that one, lock that. It just kind of takes 2 creatures out of the rotation.
And then sometimes you can spend loyalty to get a counter, right? Like, or to get a token that's a copy of one of your cards. And then playing this +1 to 6, +1 to 7, and then making all your spells cost 2 less and you're drawing an extra card every turn. Like, you're going to win the game pretty quickly from that. Tamiyo kind of is the complete package, as it were.
Yeah. Does this thing actually makes an artifact? Right? The ultimate is like literally like, here's an artifact token that you can destroy.
Which is vulnerable, yes.
Okay. Because I'm so used to, emblems which you can't interact with.
No, this is specifically not an emblem, for better or for worse. So.
Okay. I would be tempted to give Tamiyo an A. Without having played with the card, it's a little bit tough to tell, but just that +1 ability just buys you so much. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of games that you play Tamiyo plus it attack and your opponent's like, well, crap, right? Like, I guess I'll play another creature. You're like, cool, plus it on that one attack, leave back 1 blocker or whatever, or even just keep slamming and put them into that awkward position where like they really need to turn that last creature sideways on Tamiyo and start chipping away at loyalty, but they're watching their own life total plummet, and that's just from the plus ability, let alone getting this card advantage or going for the ultimate.
Yeah, I just don't really see how this in play is not something your opponent has to deal with, or they just lose the game very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like A for Tamiyo completed.
Yeah,
Sage.
I like A for Tamiyo, and sometimes you will play it for 4 mana because that's just like the play you need to make, and it's very good.
Ishin, 2 Heavens as 1 is next. This is actually a 3-colored card. So this one is red, white, and black for a 3/4 legendary human samurai at rare. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So this is a really sweet card for the Ryu Storm's Edge red, white samurai deck for sure. There's a full slate of dual lands in this set. So maybe getting in, like let's say you're white red and you want to splash Ishin for the black mana, it might be a thing. Usually it's not in limited. Like usually these triple colored cards are just kind of not a consideration. This one also has another ding against it in that it's timing sensitive. Yes, it will be pretty good whenever you cast it, but boy, if you get this thing down on turn 3 or 4, it is a house. And every turn after that, it gets a little worse, a little worse, a little worse. It does have that thing where if you're doing the samurai warrior thing, it will double trigger, and that could be good even late in the game. So maybe still worth a splash. This one to me is right on that border.
Yeah, I think in general you're not going to end up putting this card in a deck. Okay. Like, it's just going to be too hard to use. Also, like, the decks that use this the best are not decks that lend themselves to splashing a color.
That's right. That's the really hard part. Okay,
so you're like, all right, in my red-white deck, I'm going to try to splash a black card. There are the tap lands at, in the
there's a whole selection of them. Yeah. So
build around B. The build around being the mana more than anything else, though you also do need the text box to matter.
Yeah, it just sucks because, like you said, that deck doesn't even want tap lands at all. Hinata Dawn Crowned is 1 blue, red, white for a 4/4 legendary Kirin Spirit. It's got Flample, flying and trample. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target. Is that a complete sentence?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Spells your opponent cast costs 1 more to cast for each target. So, we should really start with the mana issue here, right? This is a triple colored card. It is good. It's, 4/4 flying trample for 4 mana is excellent on rate if you can get it down. The targeting stuff probably doesn't matter a whole lot. I would put it in the same category as Ishin. I don't think you're going to play it. Like, I just don't really see how this fits into the format super well. If you have great mana, sure, you can throw it in as like a random value creature, but it's not, this isn't some game winner. It's fine. It's good on rate basically is about it.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little,
I think it's
a little better than Ishin.
I think it's worse.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's a better card, but it costs more mana. And the static stuff is just whatever. I'm like basically just writing that off. Are you splashing for a 4/4 flying trample for 4? The issue is that you probably won't have it on 4,
Yeah, you're still probably not. I think a 4/4 flying trample is going to be more likely to be better in the late game than a 3/4. But either way, this is around B where if the mana works, the mana works.
Another
Combine
card
this with Magma Opus for some real fun, though.
Oh, there you go.
Because it costs like 2 mana.
It's like all the targets. Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. The Kami War is next. And this one's probably, is this really called the Kami War? Anyway, it's 1 white, blue, black, red, green. So 1 in a Wooburg for a Mythic Rare saga. And chapter 1 is exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Great. Chapter 2 is return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then each opponent discards a card. Yeah, sure. Great. I mean, whatever. Just say you win the game. It flips over into Okagachi Made Manifest, which is a 6/6. I mean, I'll read it for fun, but it's a 6/6 enchantment creature, dragon spirit that's all colors. It has flying and trample. And when it attacks, defending player chooses a non-land card in your graveyard, return that card to your hand, and it gets +X/+0, where X is the mana value of that card. Blah, 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 blah. It's a Wooburg card. If you ever do it, send us a screenshot. But I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, only goes in one type of deck, which is like a 5-color, rampy, dual land mana fix deck. And then, yeah, go for it. Have fun. But, come on. It's a build around whatever. B+ or something, but you just can't throw that in your deck. So,
all right. Anything else to say about it?
Can we move on? It's a Wooburg card.
I just find it funny how offended you get by cards that
I'm
really
just over
can't
it.
be played and limited.
I'm
very
just
much,
over it. I'm like, I don't care. What about Eater of Virtue?
So it's a 1 mana legendary artifact equipment. So straight up equipment, not reconfigure. Mm-hmm. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 with equip 1. So it's a bone splitter. That's where it starts.
Oof, that's good.
But it's got some other text. Whenever equipped creature dies, exile it.
Okay. Exile that creature. Okay.
Yeah. So that's okay, that's kind of weird. Why are we doing that? And the answer is, as long as a card equipped or exiled with Eater of Virtue has flying, the equipped creature has flying.
Oh.
Same is true for first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, protection, reach, trample, and vigilance. I think I did pretty good on that, actually.
You rattled that. Very nice.
Yeah.
This card's
is
cool.
my next calling.
Yeah. So it remembers, the people it helped.
Basically.
That's cool.
So what it does is it ends up being a Bone Splitter, a 1-mana equipment that costs 1 to equip, that gives +2/+0, which makes your creatures pretty good and aggressive, right? And then anytime one of your creatures wearing it dies, it passes on the abilities to every other creature that's worn it.
That's really cool.
Really cool with like First Strike or flying. Not as impressive with Death Touch, even though Death Touch isn't terrible, but basically just, yeah, really cool card. And any creature heavy deck will be pretty happy with this. You don't have to go nuts trying to like make it into, you know, this whole build around. It's mostly just like put this in your deck with a lot of creatures. You get a good, aggressive, cheap equipment. You should always play that in a deck with a lot of creatures, right? 1 mana and +1 mana for +2/+0 is a good deal.
100%.
And then sometimes you'll stack up a nice little like ability. Like, I mean, you get lifelink on this thing and you probably win the game, right?
Yep.
+2/+0 lifelink for 1 mana equipment is just like, you just keep trading off and gaining life. Flying, the same. Double strike, obviously, just absurd.
Yeah, you mentioned Death Touch. Even that's fine on like if you have a bunch of tokens or whatever, because you can just like attack with one, move this over to another one. Yeah,
so I'm in for Eater of Virtue here.
Card's awesome. I mean, what's the ceiling on it? Because this will reach whatever ceiling it can have. Like, what would you give Bone Splitter?
I mean, I think Bone Splitter,
like that's a B, right? Or
is
B
about
plus?
a B, and this is probably closer to a B plus.
Yeah,
like, I don't. The thing about the ability is like it's not going to come up all that often. No. I bet like half the games that you draw this and play this, it won't relevantly change the outcome of the game that it gives an ability.
Right.
The ones that it does though, the whole game can all of a sudden just be about Eater of Virtue and nothing else.
Totally. Interesting also to put it on your creature that has that ability and just kind of be like, I'm going to block or,
I think lifelink is actually my number one ability for this because you put this on a 2/2 lifelink. Now it's a 4/2 lifelink. Your opponent can't just ignore it because how do you win the game if that's true? And if they trade, now all of a sudden they lose because now all your 3/3s are 5/3 lifelinks. They just buy you infinite time. At some point, you put it on a flyer, and then what?
Yeah, and of course, if it gets flying,
this might
it's
actually
also
be
just
an A minus.
awesome.
I think if you draft Eater of Virtue, I would aggressively look for lifelinkers and to
flyers.
some degree flyers.
I would want flyers too. Yeah. I like B plus to A minus for Eater of Virtue. Really sweet card. Also, it's just like it's a samurai sword. I mean,
I'll let you read the next one because it has the properties you like in a limited card.
Oh my god, Mech Titan Core, 2 mana for a 2/4 artifact vehicle at rare with crew 2. That's it. That's they printed a vanilla. All right, fine. You can pay 5 mana, exile Mech Titan Core and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control to create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste that is all colors. When that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core, except Mech Titan Core, to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. You have got to be kidding me.
Okay, so in Mech Titan Core's defense, this isn't quite as impossible as 5 colors or assembling 3 different rares like the old Cauldron thing.
Okay.
It really just means eat 4 other artifact creatures in our vehicles. The problem is it says artifact creatures or vehicles. You can't just put a bunch of cheap 1 mana artifacts in your deck to sack to this. They have to actually be creatures or vehicles. Overall, this is like a build around like D where like a 2 mana 2/4 crew 2 vehicle is just not very good.
Really,
you're not really getting any extra damage or upgrades. And paying 5, exiling this and 4 other creatures, yeah, that's good if you can get that, but I feel like most of the time your opponent's going to see it coming from a mile away. So
totally.
I think Voltron here probably just gets an F, but I wouldn't dissuade someone from trying to live the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to do it. Like, I'm going to first pick Mech Titan Core and move all in for sure. But I mean, this does not seem fruitful. Your opponent just has too much agency. If they see you get this plus 3 other things, they're like, okay, I'll just use my removal spell to kill something. When you put another one on the stack, like they're just never going to let you actually do this.
No.
Reckner Bankbuster.
Oh, I love this one.
What does this one do?
It's 2 mana for a 4/4 vehicle with crew 3 at rare. It enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it, and you can pay 2 and tap it and remove a charge counter from it to draw a card. Then if there are no charge counters on it, you make a treasure token and a 1/1 pilot that crews as if it had a 2 power greater.
That's kind of cool.
So basically it's a vehicle, the pilot's driving it, and eventually it comes out with the treasure and the pilot emerges because he successfully robbed the bank of the 1 treasure token.
That is really fun.
So I think this card's actually pretty good in decks that aren't aggressive. It's not as good in aggressive decks, but in a deck that, like a control deck, it's a 2-mana artifact that says 2-tap draw a card. And then once you do it 3 times, you get a treasure and you get a pilot that can now crew the Bank Buster. So now you get a 4/4 at the end of the deal. Yeah.
And that's how you should view it, right?
I think this primarily is a card draw card that when you complete the quest, you get a 4/4 and a treasure.
That's cool. And by the way, as usual, it's the lessons we learned along the way. You're getting a bunch of cards before you get to that point.
Yeah,
so cool.
I like this at B, Reckoner Bankbuster. Just look at it for control decks more than aggro decks.
Really cool. Mirror Box is next. This is 3 mana for an artifact at rare. It says the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. Come on. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. Each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. It's an F. Can we go to Surge Hacker Mech?
Surge Hacker Mech is a 4-mana 5/5 vehicle at rare with menace and crew 4. Pretty substantial crew cost. When Surge Hacker Mech enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. I mean, I'm in. By itself, this is a 4-mana 5/5 crew 4 with menace that pings for 2 because it's twice the number of vehicles. You get one other vehicle and you're pinging for 4.
That's like a legit
You don't need much more
spell
after that, and it's still a card. This is like the vehicle lord. It pays you off for vehicles and has a hefty crew cost. Here's where I'm starting to look for some pilots or some cards that help me crew, or and then you can put other vehicles in your deck. And Surge Hacker Mech is a pretty threatening card. So it's a build around B, but I would play this in really any creature heavy deck that you reliably can crew with, because a 5/5 menace is pretty scary. Because just getting, again, 2 damage to a creature when it comes into play, that's a good way to start the relationship.
Would you play it if you only had one vehicle? This is it.
This is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as I could reliably crew it. Otherwise, it's just a 4-mana shock at sorcery, and that's not really that interesting.
But that's a good way to flip it, right? If I told you, like, okay, 4 mana, deal 2 to a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, you'd be like, not super excited. And I'd be like, what if I left you like a crappy vehicle, a 5/5 menace with crew 4? You'd be like, okay, sure. Yeah.
Because even in a defensive deck, this lets you keep this in like a 2/2/2s untapped, and they can't attack you with a 4/4. You can just crew and block, and you're happy to make whatever trade there,
Yeah. That's a cool card, Surge Hacker Mech. Okay. We've got 5 more cards to go. It's a cycle of lands. Unless, do we have others that, no, those are all built in there. All right. Yeah. It looks like this is it.
No, we're using Scryfall, so it shows you all the cards.
Actually put the cards, like even the sagas somehow. And these are channel lands. So there's one for each color. They tap for their color. They're all legendary. And then they have a channel ability. So I'm going to kind of skip to the channel ability for each. The first one is the white one. It's Iganjo, Seat of the Empire. And the channel ability is 2 and a white and discard it. And it deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So this is a cool case study in like how good is something like this in limited, right? A land that turns into a removal spell. Pretty sweet.
This is going to apply to all 5 lands because they're very similar. First of all, you can just kind of discount the 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. It will happen every now and then. There are some uncommon legends in the set or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. You can just evaluate them as if they just cost what they cost, and they're all very good.
I mean, this doesn't cost you anything as far as opportunity cost.
Actual 0 opportunity cost, because in limited, no one's playing with like cards that punish non-basics, and you're only playing 1 copy of a legendary land. So really, there's literally no drawback. This is a plains. It comes into play untapped and tapped for white. And then it also has the alternate ability of paying 3 mana to turn it into a deal 4 to an attacker or blocker.
That's incredible.
And the reason this is so strong is you now have 17 lands and 24 spells in your deck.
Yeah.
This gets to be both. When you keep a 2-lander, this is one of the lands, just play the land. Totally fine. Does the thing. When you draw this as land number 7, you just use it as the spell. And in a lot of cases, because they don't come into play tapped, this is so sweet. This should be the last land you play out of your hand.
Absolutely.
If your opening hand has Plains, Aganjo, Seat of the Empire, play the Plains, because if you draw a mountain turn 2, you just play the mountain in your 2-drop. Then you draw another Plains turn 3, and all of a sudden you're looking at Aganjo and like, oh, I'm going to play this as a spell.
Yeah. This one seems so we're going to really focus in on what they do, how they affect the game, for limited players. And I mean, considering you're getting this for free, it's about as good as you're going to get. It's a removal spell.
When we evaluate like the invokes that have like quad costs, right? We're basically saying these are Fs outside of decks that can cast them. When we evaluate light gold cards, we often say like, hey, you don't really want to first pick a red-black card over a mono-red card because now you're less likely to play it. These go the opposite way. A spell that was 3 mana to deal 4 to an attacking or blocking creature is like a C minus.
Mm-hmm.
I think at Gandra Sea the Empires, you should pick this in draft close to like an A minus.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the reason it's so ridiculous is it's a split card and it offers 2 things and they're both good. And there's no opportunity cost. It's just such a free roll. So
awesome.
I would give a Gonjo an A minus. It's just a really good ability. And again, you just don't have to play it as a land if you don't need an extra land, and you can kind of give yourself a little time to try to figure that out. So A minus for a Gonjo, and that moves us to Otawara, Soaring City. This is the blue one, and its ability is 3 and a blue to discard it, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. And these all are cheaper if you have a legendary creature. So the blue one, also very good, a 4-mana bounce spell. This is probably a little closer to a B+. I think it's going to be a little worse. But still, again, getting it for free. The black one's Takenuma, Abandoned Mire. And its ability is 3 and a black, discard it, mill 3 cards, then return a creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand.
So this is another one you can just turn into a straight-up card.
Straight-up card.
Jeez.
This is 4 mana, doesn't affect the board. So again, maybe a little weaker, closer to like the BB plus level. Sokenzen, Crucible of Defiance is the red one. Its channel is 3 and a red, discard it to make 2 1/1 colorless spirit tokens with haste. This one's on the weaker side because 2 1/1s with haste is just not, and they're not artifacts and they don't fly. Just not that impressive. Like, but
is the instant speed part enough? I mean,
you get to block if they might attack. They might attack with a 3/1 or something into this, and you just cast
you can
this.
end step it and have a couple of attackers that they didn't expect, and still, I don't know. There's something to it.
Yeah,
that is less powerful though than the others.
This is close to like a B minus, but you should always play it, and you should pick it over almost any red common, for example, right? Except for like the best ones, because it's just an additional free spell in your deck. And then the green one, lastly, is Beside You. This is the best in Constructed by a lot, by the way. It taps for green, and its channel is 1 and a green and discard it. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search the library for a land with a basic land type and put it on the battlefield. So
you ramp them up, but like even in limited, you can hit an artifact enchantment. You're not going to hit non-basics very often, or there's really no point to. But there are artifact creatures and enchantment creatures kind of all over the place here.
Yeah, this I think is really good because it's a path to exile removal. They get a land out of the deal. So you're getting 2 for 1, but this and the white one are both just removal spells.
Right. Like, they kill things
artifact
on board. Yeah.
I mean, this is closer to an A than it is to a B. It's like a B plus A minus sort of level. So
very cool.
Yeah. These cards are awesome. I look forward to playing these. These are going to be really, really good.
Yeah. And you should definitely keep an eye out them early. They're going to be underrated. At first, like for limited, people tend to overlook the rare lands. They're like, yeah, whatever. But these are like actually spells that are also lands. Okay, well, what do we think? They there were a lot of A's, but it didn't feel quite as A heavy as Vow did.
Yeah, I mean, there were some the mythic rare dragons are just absurd. That's fine.
They better be A's, right?
They're mythic. That's where those should live.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that a lot of the really powerful cards had a lot of play to them. Like the Reality Chip or Thousand Face Shadow or, any like cards like that, like Blade of the Oni. These cards have a lot of raw power, but it's not in the same way as like, oh, my opponent cast Toxel or to cast Halana and Alina on turn 4. It's like, oh, they set up the game so that they got to copy their 3/3 attacker, or they got a ninja in with this, or they have an artifact and an enchantment. So now Soul Transfer kills my thing and brings back their thing. There's a lot of work there, and the dragons are the dragons, but that's fine. I think that looks like a cycle of mythic rares. I'm a lot more excited to play the set than I was for Vow after reading the spoiler.
Yeah, me too.
This set looks awesome. I can't wait to draft.
Especially after reading the Reality Chip. My little equipment jellyfish.
I mean, no one can ever turn down a chip, like get a bowl of chips out there. Like, what are you doing?
You can't have just one. I'll tell you that. All right, let's call it a show there. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for the Rare and Mythic review here for for Neon Dynasty. Set looks awesome. Can't wait to jump in and see how some of these rares actually perform. It'll be out very shortly. Want to mention our sponsors before we take off. Channelfireball.com. If you want to order Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, either a sealed product or singles, make sure you head over to Channel Fireball and use the affiliate code LR at checkout. Also, the show's brought to you by FTX. If you're interested in managing digital assets, investing in that space, FTX is the place to go. It's ftx.com outside the US and ftx.us within it. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV, pretty much everywhere. And you can find everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. We'll see you next week.
All right. Speaking of these, the reconfigure equipment, and how I'm like saying like they should just give their stats or whatever. I've got 2 hot takes for you on how I think Magic rules should be changed.
Oh, I like this.
The first one, Andrew Ellenbogen just brought it up on Twitter, but I believe this for a long time.
You mean like earlier in the day before we were doing the show when you were checking Twitter, right?
No, this was a couple days ago.
Okay, good. A couple days ago, yeah. Not just now, like while we were recording the show when you were checking Twitter. That
I would never.
Right.
The what he was saying, and I agree with, is when all targets of a spell are removed in Magic, the spell fizzles. I think this rule is just straight up bad. So imagine explaining to a player, all right, you cast, destroy target creature, gain 2 life, and I bounce my creature in response. Now you don't gain the life.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, what is the good reason for that?
Yeah, 'cause I think I'm too entrenched at this point to separate out. No, why not? Yeah.
I mean, Eternal, the game that I worked on, helped develop, doesn't do it that way because we don't think that's fun. Other games like Legends of Runeterra, for example, don't do it that way. Like, what is the upside of a spell should just resolve as much as it can resolve? Like,
yes, just like it does if there's multiple targets, which we assume is just the normal way.
Right. So when you cast Part the Water Veil and they to take an extra turn and make a land into a 6/6, and they bounce the land in response and you don't get your extra turn, does that feel like what should happen?
No, it doesn't.
No, it obviously doesn't.
No, so especially not to a new player.
This is like Magic rules at their worst, where because it says target, therefore now it gets to happen. If it said target player takes an extra turn and make a 6/6 land, now that works. Mm-hmm. Why? And the answer is not satisfying. So I know that there are some amount of rules, and wait till I get to the next one, that like people will argue this breaks how Magic works, and I have this really long rules explanation. I understand Magic can't just change rules willy-nilly and whatnot. Mm-hmm. First of all, I think this rule could be changed. I haven't heard a compelling reason why it wouldn't, except this is how it works. There might be some old card interactions that kind of break when you do this. I think you can deal with those because the number of people who interact with this rule going forward and in situations where it's bad vastly outnumber the number of people who their one commander game with the guy playing a card from Odyssey plus a card from Visions is like, right. So that's the first one. The second is I don't think Magic should have an upkeep step.
Oh.
So the upkeep step was originally made because there are cards that required upkeep. You had to pay the upkeep, like Demonic Hordes or Lord of the Pit. You have a step there so you can pay that upkeep. Sagas has shown us you just don't need to do that. You just have things trigger main phase 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think Magic would be better if it didn't have an upkeep. What else is upkeep used for? Oh, so during upkeep I can tap all your lands with opposition?
Right.
Cool.
That's not that's definitely like loopholing a rule.
It's like it's like the draw step. Like I also think the draw should just happen at the start of the turn and then you progress with the turn. Mm-hmm. Like when someone says, "Hey, I have an effect in your draw step," is that something that you enjoy hearing?
It's never good. Yeah, no, that's true. They could combine or somehow reduce the number of those steps. That's amazing.
And look, I understand. I've worked on a lot of different digital games at this point, and like those are optimized for like speed and all that. But like removing clicks, whether it's IRL or online, is a good thing. And Magic has too many phases and too many rules, and I believe that the targeting restriction should definitely, or the spells fizzling when they have no targets should definitely go. I think the Magic would be better without an upkeep. That one, I will admit, probably causes a lot of problems. Probably can't do that. It's too late. You got to just, maybe the next time you make a game, don't have an upkeep. No games have that, of course, now. But
right.
I don't know. I think Magic has a lot of rules for rules' sake to some degree, and I'm way more of the attitude of like, just make it do the thing you want to do, and like you don't have to have a super satisfying explanation when things get really complicated. But there's a reason I'm not a rules manager, so